Allow yourself to settle. Find a comfortable position, wherever you are lying down or resting tonight. Let your body sink a little deeper into whatever is beneath you. There is nothing you need to hold on to right now, nothing you need to keep upright. You can let go of all of it. Just breathe. Take one slow breath in. Hold it gently. And release slowly, fully, without hurry. Take another, slower this time. Let your chest rise and fall like the surface of a very calm ocean. And another, even slower. Feel the weight of your body pressing down into the surface beneath you. Feel the tension in your muscles beginning to ease, not forced, just releasing naturally the way a fist unclenches when there is nothing left to hold. With each breath, your body grows a little heavier, a little more still, a little more quiet. Tonight, we are going somewhere most humans have never been. Somewhere beyond the reach of sunlight, beyond the reach of noise, beyond the reach of almost everything that fills the waking hours of a human life. We are going to the deep ocean, not the shore, with its salt smell and its sound of breaking waves, not the surface, where the wind moves across the water in long, slow patterns and the light of the sun scatters into 1,000 directions. Not the shallow coastal waters where boats sit at anchor in the evening and fish move through water that is warm and green and full of light, and the bottom is close enough to see from the surface on a clear day. We are going much deeper than any of that, down into the places where the ocean has no ceiling of light, down into the places where the water is cold and perfectly still and very, very dark, down into the places where time moves differently, or perhaps does not move at all, down into the oldest, quietest, most unreachable parts of this world. But there is no rush to get there. We have the whole night. So let your eyes close if they haven't already. Let your jaw soften. Let your shoulders drop a little further. Let your hands rest open and still. The ocean is waiting. And it has always been patient. Begin by imagining the ocean at night. You are floating on the surface. The water is warm here, the kind of warmth that comes from months of sunlight absorbed slowly into the upper layers of the sea. Not uncomfortable, not too much, just the right kind of warmth that makes you feel held. The ocean rises and falls gently beneath you, long, slow swells moving across thousands of miles of open water, each one lifting you slightly, almost imperceptibly, and then letting you back down again, up and down, a rhythm so slow and steady it begins to feel like breathing. There is no shore visible in any direction. No land, no buildings, no roads, no lights on any horizon. Just the open Pacific Ocean stretching out in every direction, dark and vast and very, very calm. Above you, the sky is full of stars, more stars than most people ever see. Out here, far from any city, far from any light source except the stars themselves, the sky is thick with them. Layer upon layer of light, some of it billions of years old, reaching down through the dark to find you here on the surface of this quiet ocean. There is the Milky Way, a pale band stretching from one horizon to the other. Not a blur of light, but a river of individual stars, each one its own sun. Each one surrounded by its own invisible worlds. There are constellations whose names were given by sailors thousands of years ago. Men and women who navigated by these same stars, crossing these same waters, guided by the same sky you are looking up into tonight. The stars reflect in the water around you. Thousands of points of light, shimmering slightly in the gentle motion of the surface. Above and below, light and you, floating quietly in the dark space between them. But tonight, we are not looking up. Tonight, we are going down. Take one slow breath and begin to sink. The water closes over you gently, not with force, not with any cold shock, just slowly, quietly, the way a door closes in a house late at night when everyone is already asleep. The sound of the surface fades. The small movement of wind across water. The faint breath of the ocean, all of it becoming quieter and quieter and quieter still, like a sound being turned down very slowly on a dial, lower and lower, until it is almost gone. And then gone entirely. The water here is still warm, pale blue. Light still reaches this depth, scattered and soft, like the light in a room early in the morning before the sun has fully risen. You can see your hands in front of you. You can see the surface above, rippling gently with the reflection of starlight. But you keep descending, slowly, without effort, the way a leaf settles through still air toward the ground. At 10 meters below the surface, the light is already different. Not darker, exactly, but different in quality, softer, more filtered. The way light looks when you open your eyes underwater in a calm pool, all that pale blue diffusion, light moving through water, the way sound moves through a crowd, spreading and softening in all directions at once. The temperature is a little cooler here, just slightly. A faint reminder that the warmth of the surface is above you now, and below is something else entirely. At 20 meters, the red wavelengths of sunlight have been absorbed by the water above you. What remains is blue, deep blue. A color that is difficult to describe to someone who has never seen it, not the blue of a clear sky, not the blue of shallow tropical waters, but something deeper and more ancient. At 30 meters, the blue deepens further. The light dims. Not dramatically, not in a way that would alarm you. Just a gradual, steady, peaceful dimming, like a lamp being turned down very slowly on a dial, gently, with intention. You continue to descend. There is no hurry. The ocean receives you calmly. At 50 meters, small creatures begin to appear around you. Not large animals, not anything that would catch the eye from a distance. Small things, transparent things. A jellyfish drifting past, its bell pulsing slowly, almost meditatively, trailing long pale threads behind it like the finest silk. It is in no hurry either. It has nowhere to be. It simply drifts, and pulses, and drifts again, moving on whatever current the ocean offers, accepting it completely. A small fish passes beneath you, silver-sided, catching what little light remains and flashing it back in a single bright moment. Then gone. Tiny particles of matter drift slowly past your face. Marine snow, scientists call it. The constant, gentle fall of organic material from the surface world above, fragments of dead plankton, tiny shells, organic debris. It has been falling through the ocean in an endless, silent snowstorm for as long as this ocean has existed. Thousands of years, millions of years, an unbroken fall, and somewhere below it settles onto the ocean floor. Building up, layer by layer, millimeter by millimeter, year by year, a soft record of everything that ever lived near the surface of this sea. You continue to sink through it, slowly, peacefully. At 100 meters, the world above you is becoming a memory. You can still see the surface, a pale shimmer far above, like the ceiling of a vast room seen from the floor. The light that reaches you now is dim and blue and very gentle. It falls on you evenly, from all sides at once, rather than from above. The temperature has dropped noticeably, not uncomfortably cold, just cool. The kind of cool that makes the air feel easier to breathe. The kind of cool that slows things down. Your body is heavier here. The pressure of the water above presses gently but firmly in from all sides. It is not threatening. It is simply the weight of the ocean, reminding you where you are. There is an extraordinary silence here. Not the silence of an empty room where you are always aware of the absence of sound, but a full silence. A silence with presence. The silence of something that has been here for a very long time and needs nothing from the world above. Let that silence settle around you. Let it hold you the way the water is holding you now, from all sides, gently, completely. At 200 meters, you reach the edge of the sunlit world. This boundary has a name. The photic zone, the layer of the ocean where enough sunlight exists for plants to grow, for photosynthesis to occur, for the kind of life that depends on light to sustain itself. Below 200 meters, that life ends, not immediately, not all at once. But the sunlight that powers the surface world, that endless engine of growth and warmth and color, no longer reaches here. You are leaving the lit world behind. Take a moment with that. The surface above you, with its warmth, its noise, its constant activity, is growing more distant with every second. Further away. Less real, like something remembered from long ago rather than something you left only minutes past. And below, the deep ocean. Dark, cold, vast, ancient, waiting. This layer of the ocean is called the mesopelagic zone, the twilight zone. It sits between the world of light above and the world of complete darkness below. Neither one thing nor the other, a place of transition, a place between. Strange animals live here. The lanternfish, so small you could hold one in the palm of your hand. It carries its own soft bioluminescent glow along its belly. Small points of blue-green light arranged in precise patterns unique to each species. A living constellation drifting through the dark. The hatchetfish, flat and silver, shaped like the blade of a small axe. Its eyes are enormous, evolved over millions of years to gather every last photon of light in this dim world. It can produce its own light from organs on its belly, precisely matching the faint glow of the water above it, making it nearly invisible to predators looking up from below. Camouflage made of light. Invisibility built from bioluminescence. These animals spend their days descending into darkness to hide, and their nights rising toward the surface to feed, an endless daily migration up and down, following the light. A journey they make every single day of their lives. But you are going in only one direction, down. The darkness gathers gradually. What was dim becomes dimmer. What was dimmer becomes dark. And what was dark becomes something else entirely. Not the comfortable darkness of a room with the lights off, where the shapes of familiar things are still visible after a few moments of adjustment, but a real darkness. A total darkness. Complete. Absolute. Below 1,000 meters, the light of the sun is completely and finally gone. Not faint, not dim. Gone. No matter how long your eyes adjust, they find nothing here. There is simply no light for them to work with. The sun's reach ends long before this depth. On the cloudiest day on the surface, some light still filters through. Here, none does. You are now in the midnight zone. The bathypelagic, 1,000 meters to 4,000 meters below the surface, a layer of ocean larger than any landscape on land, so vast in volume that it contains more living space than all the surface habitats on Earth combined, and yet so rarely visited, so rarely seen, so rarely understood. The pressure here is extraordinary. At 1,000 meters, the water above you exerts a pressure of 100 atmospheres, 100 times the pressure you feel at the surface. That is the weight of nearly 100 full atmospheres of air pressing in on every square centimeter of your body from every direction, all at once. Animals that live here have evolved over millions of years to withstand this pressure. Their bodies are built differently. No gas-filled swim bladders that would be crushed at this depth. Flexible cell membranes adapted to function under forces that would kill a surface creature instantly. Biochemistry tuned over countless generations to the specific demands of this extraordinary environment. They are built for here. This is their home. This pressure, which would destroy us, is simply the world they were born into. Let the thought of that settle over you. An entire world of life. An entire community of animals living and eating and moving and reproducing and dying. In total darkness. Under crushing pressure. In cold that never changes. Completely unaware that another world exists above them. The cold here is close to freezing. The water temperature at this depth sits just above 0 degrees Celsius. It has not changed in thousands of years, perhaps tens of thousands, perhaps longer. The deep ocean is one of the most stable environments on Earth. No storms reach this depth, no seasons, no temperature swings driven by the tilt of the Earth or the movement of air masses. While the surface world cycles through summer and winter, through drought and flood, through warming and cooling, the deep ocean simply continues. The same cold, the same dark, the same quiet, year after year after year, century after century. There is something deeply restful about that. Something that the part of you that is tired, that is always tired, beneath the surface of a busy life recognizes and responds to. Constancy. Stillness. The reassurance of something that does not change. Let that feeling stay with you. There is nothing to do, nothing to solve. Nothing to decide, just the quiet of the deep ocean around you. And the cold, and the dark, and the soft weight of miles of water above. In the midnight zone, some of the animals produce their own light. Not sunlight. Nothing borrowed from the surface. Their own light, made inside their own bodies through chemical reactions that produce a cold, blue-green glow. Bioluminescence. Scientists estimate that 76% of all animals in the midnight zone can produce their own light. More than 3/4. In a world of absolute darkness, light has become one of the most important tools for survival. Some use it to hunt. The anglerfish, with its long fishing rod appendage tipped with a glowing lure, dangling in the dark in front of its enormous tooth-lined mouth. Small prey, drawn to the light the way moths are drawn to a flame, swimming toward what they cannot understand. Some use it to communicate, flashing patterns to attract mates, to signal danger, to coordinate with members of the same species in the dark. Some use it to startle or confuse predators, a sudden burst of bright bioluminescence, disorienting, blinding, buying a moment to escape. Light as a weapon, light as a voice, light as a trap. In the deepest, darkest parts of the world, life has found ways to carry the light within itself. Let that image rest with you for a moment. Small lights, drifting through the absolute dark, moving slowly, pulsing gently. Each one a living creature making its way through a world most humans will never see. You continue to descend. The darkness is total now, complete in every direction, above, below, to every side. There is no up or down in any visual sense, only the sensation of slow downward movement through water that becomes, with each passing meter, a little colder, a little heavier, a little more still. Occasionally a small light appears, far to your left a faint blue-green pulse. Then dark, then pulse, then dark. Something is alive there, in the darkness. Something small, something ancient, something entirely adapted to a world you are only passing through. And then it is gone, and the dark returns. And you continue downward. At 2,000 meters, the ocean floor is still far below you. The midnight zone is enormous, nearly 3,000 meters thick in most parts of the ocean. You could stack 6 Eiffel Towers on top of each other in this layer of water and still not reach from the bottom to the top. Life here is sparse, not absent, never absent in the ocean, but spread thin. An animal might travel for hours through this darkness without encountering another living thing. There is a sound in the deep ocean. Not a loud sound, not a sharp one. A low, deep, slow-pressure wave moving through the water at the speed of sound, which is faster in water than in air, carrying information across hundreds and sometimes thousands of miles. A blue whale calling from across the Pacific can be heard in these depths. The distant rumble of an underwater earthquake, the long, slow creak of tectonic plates shifting against each other deep beneath the ocean floor. None of these sounds feel close, they feel far away, ancient, like sounds arriving from another world. Let your breathing slow to match that deep oceanic rhythm, long, slow, unhurried, in and out, in and out. At 3,000 meters, the water around you is nearly at freezing. The pressure is 300 atmospheres. Every square centimeter of your body would be subject to a force of 300 kilograms. These are numbers that are difficult to hold in the mind. They exist at a scale the human body has no reference for. We are surface creatures. We evolved for air pressure of 1 atmosphere, for temperatures between roughly 10 and 40 degrees, for light that comes from the sun. Down here, all of those assumptions are reversed. And yet life persists. Quietly, tenaciously, without drama. In the deep ocean, nothing is dramatic. Everything moves slowly. Everything is measured. Metabolisms run at a fraction of the speed of surface animals. Some deep sea fish may live for 200 years. Some sea urchins found in the abyss have been estimated at over 500 years old. In the cold and the dark, life finds a different pace. A pace that is very close to stillness. That pace is available to you tonight, not forever, not even for long, but for now, for these hours of the night that belong only to rest, you can inhabit that same stillness, slow, cold, dark, deep, at peace. Below 4,000 meters, the midnight zone ends, and the abyssal zone begins. The abyss. The word itself comes from the ancient Greek, meaning bottomless, without a bottom, without an end. The Greeks used the word to describe the primordial void before creation. Scientists use it to describe the vast, flat, mostly unexplored plains that make up more than half of the Earth's total surface. More than half. The largest single ecosystem on our planet is a place most humans have never thought about. A place that has no human name in most languages. A place that has existed for billions of years in complete darkness, complete cold, and near complete silence. You are entering it now. The ocean floor appears gradually beneath you. Not a dramatic appearance, no sudden revelation, no wall of rock rising up. Just a slow darkening of the water below, a thickening of the dark, and then, almost without noticing the transition, you realize the floor is there. It is covered in soft, pale sediment. This sediment is called abyssal clay. It has accumulated over millions of years, the slow, constant rain of marine snow from above, compressed and settled into a layer sometimes hundreds of meters thick. If you were to place your hand gently into this sediment, it would sink. It is that soft, that fine. The consistency of the softest powder, the surface of the sediment, where it meets the water, is rich with microbial life, bacteria that have been living in this sediment for thousands, perhaps millions of years. Some of the sediment cores that scientists have drilled from the abyssal plain contain bacteria that were alive during the time of the dinosaurs. Alive then, alive now, unchanged, waiting, in the dark, in the cold, in the deep, for nothing in particular. Simply existing, simply continuing. The landscape here is vast beyond easy comprehension. The abyssal plains stretch for thousands of miles in every direction, flatter than any desert, quieter than any landscape on the surface of this earth. Mountains rise from the ocean floor here and there, the mid-ocean ridges, volcanic mountain ranges longer than any chain of mountains on land, running for more than 40,000 miles around the earth like the seam of a baseball. Hydrothermal vents rise from cracks in the ocean floor, chimneys of superheated water, rich in minerals, surrounded by impossible clusters of life. Tube worms 3 meters long, swaying slowly in the warm current. White crabs moving carefully across the dark rock. Pale shrimp clustered in hundreds around the vent's mouth, all of them living in complete darkness. None of them dependent on sunlight. All of them sustained by the chemical energy leaking up from the Earth's interior, a reminder that life, if given any foothold at all, will find a way. But the hydrothermal vents are islands. Between them, the abyssal plain stretches on and on. Silent, cold, dark, still. Occasionally, the body of a whale drifts down from above, a whale fall, scientists call it, a sudden abundance in a world of scarcity. Within hours, the scavengers arrive, small crustaceans, hagfish, sleeper sharks consuming the soft tissue, then the bone-eaters, specialized worms and snails that consume the lipid-rich bones over years and decades. A single whale can support an entire community of deep-sea life for 50 years or more. A gift from above, a sudden brightness in the dark. Life feeding life, even here. Let your body rest as completely as the abyssal plain rests. Still, flat, undisturbed, at peace in the dark. And then the ocean floor drops away again. Not gradually. Suddenly, what was flat and still falls away at a steep angle into a darkness below the darkness. The walls descend on either side, dropping at 60, 70, 80 degrees into an abyss so deep it seems to have no bottom at all. This is where the Pacific Plate meets the Mariana Plate, where one vast section of the Earth's crust slides slowly and irresistibly beneath another, pressed down by forces that have been operating since before any living thing existed on the surface of this world. This is the Mariana Trench. It stretches for over 1,500 miles across the western Pacific Ocean, longer than the distance from London to Moscow. In some places it is less than 40 miles wide, but its depth is what separates it from everything else on Earth. At its deepest point, a place called Challenger Deep, the ocean floor sits nearly 11,000 meters below the surface, nearly 7 miles. If you were to take the tallest mountain on the surface of the Earth, Mount Everest, rising nearly 9 kilometers above sea level, and place it into the Mariana Trench, its summit would still be submerged beneath more than a mile of water. The trench would swallow it completely, and still have room. Fewer than 20 humans have ever reached the bottom of this place. Fewer humans have visited the deepest point on Earth than have walked on the surface of the Moon. We have better maps of Mars than we have of the ocean floor beneath you right now. Rest with that thought. There are places on this Earth, this familiar, mapped, photographed, satellite-surveilled Earth, that are more remote, more unknown, more unexplored than the surface of another planet. They have been here all along, beneath us, patient, dark, holding their secrets with great care. You are descending into the Mariana Trench now. The walls rise on either side of you. Dark rock, draped with the same soft sediment that covers the abyssal plain, but here angled and steep. Below you, the trench floor continues to descend. The pressure increases with each meter. At this depth, the water above you exerts more than 1,000 atmospheres of pressure, more than 1,000 times the air pressure at the surface. It is the kind of pressure that would instantly crush any unprotected object from the surface world. Steel canisters have been lowered to this depth and retrieved with their sides crushed inward, buckled by the weight of the water. And yet, life. In 2014, a small fish was discovered at nearly 8,000 meters below the surface, a snailfish, pale and almost translucent, moving slowly through the water at the deepest point where fish have ever been recorded, unhurried, undisturbed, perfectly at home in conditions that should, by any surface standard, make life impossible. It was not alone. Scientists watching the video footage from the submersible camera counted more than 20 snailfish in the space of a few hours, clustered together, moving in the slow, deliberate way of creatures that have no particular urgency about anything. Life finds a way, even here, even at the very bottom of the world. Allow your body to rest in that same spirit, not striving, not pushing against anything, simply present, simply continuing, like the snailfish at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, slow and quiet and perfectly suited to the darkness. Your breathing is slower now than when we began. Your body is heavier. Your thoughts, if they are still moving, are moving more slowly, like objects drifting downward through very cold, very dark water. No rush, no noise, just cold water. And time. This is where our story lives tonight, in the deepest place on Earth, in the dark, in the cold, in the silence that has no bottom. And in this place we are going to look for something that ruled every ocean on this planet for nearly 19 million years. Something so large, so powerful, so perfectly adapted to its world that for most of its existence nothing challenged it. Nothing competed with it, nothing threatened it, something that vanished, or perhaps disappeared. The most powerful predator that ever lived. And the question that has never been fully answered. Is it still here? Before we begin, take one slow breath. Let the air come in gently, hold it just for a moment, and release. You are still here, still resting, still settling deeper into the quiet. The ocean is still around you. The dark is complete. The cold is steady. The pressure of the water above is constant and even and holding you from every side. Nothing has changed. Nothing needs to. We left our story at a question: the most powerful predator that ever lived. And whether it still exists somewhere in the unreachable dark below us. But before we can answer that question, before we can even properly ask it, we need to understand what we are asking about. We need to know what the Megalodon actually was. Not the Megalodon of movies, not the Megalodon of the internet, that enormous grey shark lurking in the darkness with its mouth open wide, its teeth like kitchen knives, its eyes flat and ancient and cold. The real one. The one that the fossil record has been slowly, carefully, patiently revealing to science for decades. Because the real Megalodon is, in almost every way, more extraordinary than the one we imagined. Its full name is Otodus megalodon. Otodus from the Greek for ear-shaped tooth, Megalodon from the Greek for large tooth. Together, the ear-shaped large tooth. It is named for its teeth because its teeth are almost all we have. Sharks are cartilaginous fish. Their skeletons are made not of bone but of cartilage, the same material that forms the soft parts of your ear and the tip of your nose. Cartilage rarely fossilizes. It decays, it disappears, it leaves no trace. And so, when a megalodon died, when this enormous animal sank slowly to the ocean floor and its body began its long decomposition, the cartilage of its skeleton dissolved away into nothing, and what remained, what was preserved, what slowly hardened into the fossil record, were its teeth. Just the teeth. And they are extraordinary. A megalodon tooth is not like a modern shark tooth in the way that a photograph of a mountain is not like the mountain itself. The great white shark, the largest predatory fish alive in the ocean today, has teeth roughly 5 to 6 centimeters long. Sharp. Serrated along the edges, built for cutting through flesh and bone with efficiency and precision. A megalodon tooth could be 18 centimeters long, longer than your hand from wrist to fingertip, broader than your open palm, serrated on both edges with fine, precise serrations, each one a tiny blade, each one contributing to a cutting surface that could slice through the bones of a large whale as easily as a knife through paper. The largest megalodon tooth ever found measures just over 19 centimeters. It was discovered in Peru. It weighs nearly 1 kilogram. Hold that in your mind for a moment. A single tooth, almost the size of a brick. One tooth from a mouth that contained hundreds of them, arranged in rows, several rows deep. Replaceable throughout the animal's life as teeth wore down or broke off, new ones moved forward from behind. An endless conveyor belt of cutting surfaces, always sharp, always ready. In a single lifetime, a megalodon may have produced 40,000 individual teeth. They are scattered across the ocean floors of every ocean on Earth, washed up on beaches from South Carolina to Morocco, found in the phosphate deposits of North Carolina, in the limestone beds of Belgium, in the Atacama Desert of Chile, where the ancient seafloor is now dry land. The megalodon was everywhere. For nearly 19 million years, it was everywhere. The question of how large the megalodon grew has occupied scientists for a very long time. For most of the 20th century, scientists estimated its size by comparing its teeth to those of the great white shark, the closest living relative they could identify, and scaling up proportionally. A simple calculation, but a useful one. Those early estimates suggested a maximum length of somewhere between 15 and 20 meters. Larger than a bus. Larger than a school bus. Several times the length of the largest great white shark ever reliably measured. But more recent research has challenged and refined those estimates. In 2022, a team of researchers published a study that used a more sophisticated method, analyzing not just the teeth but the vertebrae, the body proportions implied by different fossil elements, the scaling ratios of related shark species at different periods in evolutionary history. Their findings were remarkable. The largest megalodon individuals, the biggest animals this species ever produced, the maximum end of the size range, may have reached lengths of somewhere between 15 and 20 meters, consistent with earlier estimates. But the body shape they proposed was different from what had been imagined before. Not a scaled-up great white shark, thick-bodied, blunt-nosed, with that distinctive counter-shaded grey colouring. Instead, something more elongated, more torpedo-like. A body shape perhaps closer to a mako shark, built for speed and sustained cruising rather than ambush. A predator that could cover enormous distances. A predator built for an ocean-wide range. And then in 2024, a further refinement. Researchers at University College London published a study using a new approach, modelling the megalodon's size not just from fossil measurements, but from growth rate calculations derived from the isotopic composition of its teeth. By measuring the ratios of different oxygen isotopes locked into the enamel of the teeth during growth, they were able to estimate how fast the megalodon grew, how long it lived, and what its body temperature may have been. What they found changed the picture again. The megalodon appears to have been what scientists call a regional endotherm, partially warm-blooded, able to maintain its core body temperature above the surrounding water temperature. Not fully warm-blooded like a mammal, but warmer than a typical fish. Warmer than a great white. This would have had profound consequences for its size, its speed, its behavior, and, most importantly, its appetite. A warm-blooded predator at that scale would need to eat an enormous amount, continuously. To sustain a body of 15 or more meters at an elevated internal temperature would require a caloric intake almost beyond calculation. The megalodon was not just large, it was hungry, always. Let that thought drift past you slowly, like a shadow in the water. You are still resting, still safe, still deep in the quiet dark. The megalodon is not here now. It has not been here for a very long time. But its story is extraordinary precisely because it was so total, so complete, so absolute in its dominance. And understanding the dominance, really feeling the scale of it, is part of what makes the deep ocean so remarkable. So let the story continue. Slowly, gently, without hurry. To understand the megalodon, you need to understand the ocean it lived in. The world of 20 million years ago, the Miocene epoch, was recognizably our world and yet profoundly different. The continents were in roughly their current positions, but not quite. The Isthmus of Panama, the thin strip of land that connects North and South America and separates the Pacific from the Atlantic, did not yet exist. In its place was an open channel of warm, shallow water connecting the two great oceans. The Tethys Sea, an ancient ocean that once separated Europe and Africa from Asia, was closing, slowly over millions of years as the African and Eurasian plates ground together to form the Alps and the Himalayas. The climate of the Miocene was warmer than today. Sea levels were higher, the tropics were broader. Warm, shallow coastal seas extended much further from the equator than they do now. And those warm, shallow coastal seas were full of life. Enormous, diverse, abundant life. Including enormous whales. The whales of the Miocene were not quite the whales we know today. The great baleen whales, the blue whale, the fin whale, the humpback were present, but in forms somewhat different from their modern descendants. Smaller in some cases, more diverse. Occupying ecological niches that have since contracted or disappeared entirely. There were also toothed whales of considerable size, predatory whales hunting in the warm Miocene seas, some of them approaching or exceeding the size of today's sperm whale. And there were the early relatives of today's dolphins and porpoises, smaller, faster, more maneuverable, filling the shallower coastal waters in enormous numbers. In the Miocene Ocean, cetaceans, the group that includes all whales, dolphins, and porpoises, were at or near their greatest diversity. More species, more body plans, more niches filled, more biomass moving through more water than at almost any other point in their evolutionary history. This was the world the Megalodon inhabited, and this was the food source it had evolved to exploit. Scientists have known for a long time that the Megalodon preyed on large marine mammals. The fossil evidence is unambiguous. Whale bones have been found with Megalodon tooth marks on them, deep, parallel gouges in fossilized ribs and vertebrae. The spacing and depth consistent with Megalodon teeth of specific sizes. In some cases, the teeth that made those marks have been found nearby, shed during the attack, and preserved in the same sediment as the bone they struck. The evidence tells us something interesting about how the Megalodon hunted. Many of the tooth marks are on the harder bones, the ribs, the flippers, the vertebrae, not the softer tissues that would decompose without leaving fossil evidence. The pattern suggests that the Megalodon was not simply biting and holding in the manner of a great white shark attacking a seal, it was crushing. The bite force of the Megalodon has been estimated through biomechanical modeling based on jaw size and muscle attachment points implied by the tooth roots at somewhere between 100,000 and 180,000 newtons. To put that in context, the bite force of a saltwater crocodile, already the strongest bite of any living animal, is approximately 16,000 newtons. The Megalodon bit with 10 to 12 times the force of the most powerful living predator. It did not merely bite, it destroyed, it dismantled. With a single bite, it could crush through the ribcage of a whale that outweighed most modern cars. The strategy, as best as scientists can reconstruct it, was to disable first. To target the flippers, the tail, the structural elements that allowed a whale to move and escape, and to remove them. A whale cannot swim without its tail flukes. Without propulsion, without the ability to dive or surface or flee, it becomes, in the cold arithmetic of predation, simply meat. The Megalodon understood this, or rather it had evolved over millions of years and countless generations to act in exactly this way. Efficient, precise, devastating, allow yourself to breathe, slow and deep, in and out. The violence of what we are describing is far away from you tonight, far away in time, separated by millions of years, far away in depth, in a darkness no sunlight ever reached. You are safe, you are warm, you are resting. And the story we are telling is simply the story of how this world works, how it has always worked, at its most remote and ancient. Predator and prey. Hunter and hunted. A balance so old it predates the existence of land animals, a balance written into the deepest grammar of life on Earth. Let that thought carry you deeper, down, and still. The Megalodon did not live in the deep ocean. This is something worth understanding. Despite everything we have established about the deep, its darkness, its cold, its pressure, its ancient stillness, the Megalodon was not a deep ocean animal. It was a coastal animal, a shallow water animal, a warm water animal. The fossil record makes this clear. Megalodon teeth are found overwhelmingly in what were once coastal environments, ancient shorelines, shallow continental shelf deposits, warm tropical and subtropical bays, places where warm currents carried nutrient-rich water close to shore, places where prey was abundant and accessible, places where the ocean was 100 meters deep rather than 10,000. The Megalodon preferred the same waters its prey preferred. The whales and dolphins of the Miocene stayed close to productive coastal zones, following the blooms of plankton, the shoals of fish, the upwelling currents that brought cold, nutrient-rich water up from the deep to fertilize the surface. And the Megalodon followed the whales. This is why its range was global. Its teeth have been found on every continent except Antarctica. From the warm, shallow seas of what is now the east coast of the United States, to the ancient Tethys shorelines of what is now Europe, to the equatorial Pacific, to the coasts of what is now Australia, Japan, India, South Africa. Everywhere warm water touched land, everywhere the great whales gathered to feed and breed. The Megalodon was there. It followed the food. And the food was everywhere the warm ocean touched the shore. Scientists believe the Megalodon gave birth in shallow coastal nursery areas. The evidence for this comes from sites in Maryland in the United States and in the Bone Valley Formation of Florida, ancient shallow water environments where large concentrations of megalodon teeth of unusual size distribution have been found. Not the enormous teeth of mature adults. Smaller teeth. Teeth from young animals. Juveniles. Pups. Like modern sharks, the Megalodon appears to have sought out protected, warm, shallow coastal waters to give birth. Places where the young could survive their first months or years with fewer predators, with abundant prey, with the safety of shallow water above and the warmth of the sun filtering. Down through a relatively short water column, a Megalodon pup at birth is estimated to have been somewhere between 2 and 4 meters long. 2 to 4 meters. A juvenile shark the size of a full-grown great white shark, beginning its life as something that would itself be an apex predator in any modern ocean. From that starting point it would grow, slowly over decades, reaching sexual maturity at perhaps 25 years of age. Continuing to grow beyond that, a large adult Megalodon may have been 60 or 70 or 80 years old. Some estimates suggest a maximum lifespan of close to 100 years, an entire century of hunting, an entire century of dominance, in waters that were warm and blue and full of life. Let your body grow a little heavier, a little more still. Your breathing is easy and slow. Your muscles are releasing, one by one, gently and without effort, like a tide going out. The story continues. And you don't need to do anything with it except let it wash over you. Slowly, gently, like water. The world in which the Megalodon reigned was not a world of constant violence. That is a misunderstanding worth correcting. The ocean is not a place of constant conflict. It is not a battlefield. It is an ecosystem, a community of living things so interconnected, so interdependent, so carefully balanced over millions of years of evolution that every part of it supports every other part. The Megalodon, as apex predator, would have hunted relatively rarely compared to the total time it spent doing other things. Moving slowly through warm coastal waters, thermoregulating, seeking out water temperatures that matched its needs, socializing perhaps, though we know almost nothing about the social behavior of ancient sharks. Simply existing, drifting, moving with the currents. An apex predator's life is, for most of its duration, unhurried. Nothing challenges it, nothing threatens it, nothing requires it to be alert in the way that a prey animal must always be alert. The Megalodon moved through its world with what we might, from a distance of millions of years, almost call serenity. Not the serenity of contentment, it felt nothing we would recognize as contentment, but the serenity of a creature for whom the world offered no challenge it could not meet. No threat it needed to fear, no obstacle it could not overcome. It simply existed in warm water, under open sky, in an ocean full of life, without competition, without predators of its own, without anything in its world that suggested its reign might one day end. And yet it did end. Roughly 3.6 million years ago, the Megalodon disappeared from the fossil record, not gradually, or rather not as gradually as we might expect for a creature that had been so dominant for so long. The last confirmed Megalodon teeth in the fossil record are dated to approximately 3.6 million years before the present. After that date, nothing. A clean line in the sediment. Above the line, no Megalodon teeth. Below the line, an ocean full of them. What happened? This is a question that has occupied paleontologists for decades, and the answer, the most current, most complete answer that science can offer, is not a simple one. It is a story of how the world can change around a predator so slowly and so comprehensively that even the most powerful creature on Earth has no defense against it. It begins with ice. The Pliocene epoch, which began approximately 5 million years ago, brought significant changes to the Earth's climate. The planet began to cool, slowly by geological standards over hundreds of thousands of years, but inexorably. Ice began to accumulate at the poles, sea levels began to fall. The broad, warm, shallow coastal seas that had characterized the Miocene began to contract. The Isthmus of Panama, that channel of warm water between the Pacific and Atlantic, closed, finally, around 3.5 million years ago. The warm equatorial current that had flowed between the oceans was cut off. Ocean circulation patterns changed. Waters that had been warm became cooler. Waters that had been productive became less so. The prey species that the Megalodon had depended on for millions of years began to change with the climate. Some species of large whale shifted their ranges toward colder, higher latitude waters, following the krill and the cold water productivity that the changing climate was redistributing. The Megalodon, adapted to warm waters, could not easily follow. Its physiology was tuned to a warmer ocean. Cold water slowed it. Cold water reduced the digestive efficiency it depended on to support its enormous body. And the shallow coastal seas, the nursery grounds, the hunting grounds, the warm, productive waters that had defined the Megalodon's world for 19 million years were shrinking. The world was changing, and the Megalodon, for all its power, could not change with it. There is another element to this story: competition. As the Megalodon's numbers declined, the ocean it had dominated began to change in other ways. New predators emerged, or rather, existing predators grew bolder and more effective as the apex predator that had suppressed them began to disappear. The great white shark, Carcharodon carchareus, was not yet the apex predator we know today when the Megalodon was at its peak. It occupied a smaller niche. It was effective, but constrained by the presence of something enormously more powerful. As the Megalodon declined, the great white and other large shark species were able to expand their ranges, increase their populations, take over niches that had previously been inaccessible. A new generation of large, intelligent, cold-tolerant cetaceans also emerged in the Pliocene. The orca, or Canis orca, developed during this period into what it is today, a fast, highly intelligent, socially organized predator that hunts cooperatively, that can target prey far larger than itself, and that ranges across cold and warm waters alike. The orca, unlike the Megalodon, was not limited to warm water. The orca, unlike the Megalodon, could follow the changing prey into colder seas. The orca, unlike the Megalodon, had a brain that allowed it to adapt its hunting strategies in real time, to solve problems, to cooperate with others of its kind. The world had changed. And in the new world, new strategies were more effective than raw size and power. The Megalodon could not adapt quickly enough. Its prey was gone or going. Its habitat was contracting, its competitors were rising, and at some point, at some quiet, undocumented moment that left no trace in the fossil record, the last Megalodon died. Alone. In a changing ocean. In water that was perhaps already a little cooler than it preferred. Breathe slowly. In and out. The weight of millions of years of story is settling around you now, not as a burden, but as something heavy and warm and ancient, like a blanket that has been waiting a very long time to be used. Let it rest on you. Let it hold you. You are still here, still in the deep, still surrounded by the dark and the cold and the immense quiet of the ocean. And the story is not finished yet, because there is one more question. The question that every person who has ever heard of the Megalodon, every diver who has ever swum in deep water and felt the instinctive pull of the unknown below them, every scientist who has ever held one of those enormous fossilized teeth in their hands, has asked, is it possible that the Megalodon did not go extinct? Is it possible, even remotely, even theoretically, that somewhere in the unexplored vastness of the deep ocean, in one of the places where we have never sent a camera, never lowered a hydrophone, never deployed a submersible, the Megalodon is still alive? The answer that science gives is clear, and it is no. Not with any meaningful probability, not in any way that should be taken seriously as a scientific hypothesis. The reasoning is straightforward and worth going through, not to disappoint, but because the reasoning itself reveals something extraordinary about what we do and don't know about the ocean. First, the Megalodon was not a deep water animal. We established this earlier. It lived in shallow, warm coastal waters. The deep ocean, cold, dark, under enormous pressure, would have been deeply inhospitable to an animal with its physiology and its prey requirements. An animal that needed to consume large marine mammals regularly, that depended on warm water for metabolic efficiency, that gave birth in shallow nursery bays, could not have retreated to the deep ocean and survived. The prey isn't there. The warmth isn't there. The conditions it needed simply don't exist in the deep.
Second, a population of Megalodon large enough to sustain itself over millions of years could not remain hidden. The Megalodon's prey, large marine mammals, are conspicuous. They surface to breathe. They communicate in ways we can detect and record. If Megalodon were still hunting them in any ocean on Earth, the evidence would be visible, in the form of attack patterns on whale carcasses, in the form of teeth shed during attacks found in those carcasses, in the form of massive, living animals occasionally sighted from boats or captured on
underwater cameras. We have monitored the world's whale populations closely for decades. We track migrations, we photograph individuals for identification, we record injuries and attack patterns. A predator of the Megalodon's size would leave unmistakable evidence in the whale population. It does not. Third, the ocean, for all its unexplored depths, is not the hiding place that popular imagination sometimes suggests. We have placed hydrophones, underwater microphones, at virtually every depth in every ocean on Earth. We have seabed observatories in the deep Pacific, deep Atlantic, deep Indian Ocean. We have satellite tracking of surface activity. We have decades of accumulated sonar data from naval and research vessels crisscrossing every ocean. An animal of 20 meters, an animal roughly the size of a megalodon, would be detectable by these instruments if it existed in sufficient numbers to sustain a breeding population. We have detected nothing. The ocean is vast. But it is not silent, and we are listening. The megalodon is gone. It lived for 19 million years and then it was gone. because the world changed and it could not change with it. That is perhaps the most honest and most complete answer science can give. And yet, there is something in the human mind that cannot quite accept the finality of that answer. Some part of us, the part that still has the instincts of an animal that lived on the edges of things, that knew the darkness could hold threats, that evolved its fear of deep water precisely because deep water does hold things we cannot see, that part does not feel entirely satisfied. The deep ocean is 95% unexplored. 95%. Of the roughly 360 million square kilometers of ocean floor, we have directly imaged and sampled roughly 5%. The rest is known only through indirect measurements, sonar, pressure sensors, water sampling. And in that 95%, in those unmapped, unvisited, uncatalogued depths, new species are still being discovered regularly. Not small species, not microscopic organisms, large animals. The giant squid, Architeuthis ducks, reaching lengths of up to 13 meters with eyes the size of dinner plates, was known only from carcasses and from accounts of sailors for most of human history. It was not photographed alive in its natural habitat until 2004. It was not filmed in the deep ocean until 2012, an animal the size of a school bus, living in every ocean on Earth, and we did not see it alive until 8 years ago. The colossal squid, larger still, heavier, with rotating hooks on its tentacles instead of suckers, is known only from a handful of specimens. Its behavior in the wild is almost entirely unknown. In 2023, researchers deployed baited cameras in the deep ocean off New Zealand and captured footage of an entirely new species of large siphonophore, a colonial organism stretching more than 40 meters in length, moving slowly through the darkness. A living creature longer than a blue whale, unknown to science. Found in water we have been sailing over for centuries. The deep ocean keeps its secrets well, not because it is actively hiding them, but because we have not yet found the right way to look. So the question is not really whether the Megalodon is alive. It almost certainly is not. The question is what else is down there? In the dark, in the cold, in the 95% of ocean floor that no human eye has ever seen. What else is waiting, patient and ancient, in the silence below the silence? What else is moving slowly through the midnight zone and the abyssal plain and the deep walls of the Mariana Trench, living its life in total darkness, in cold that never changes, under pressure that would instantly destroy anything from the world above? What else has been there since before we existed, since before the ancestors of mammals first came ashore, since before the dinosaurs, since before complex life as we know it had fully established itself on this planet and is still there now, unchanged, undisturbed, unknown? That question has no answer yet. And perhaps that is the most extraordinary thing about the deep ocean. It is the one place left on Earth that holds a genuine mystery, not a manufactured mystery, not a mystery for entertainment, but a real scientific unanswered question. A place where we genuinely do not know what is there, and may not know for a very long time. Let that thought carry you further into rest. The mystery of the deep ocean, the questions it holds, the creatures it keeps. None of it requires anything from you tonight. It has been there for millions of years. It will be there tomorrow. It will be there long after tonight has passed and the morning has come and whatever the day brings has begun. For now, it is simply here. Below you. Around you. Patient and dark and full of things we have not yet learned to see. Let your breathing slow a little more. Let your body sink a little deeper. You are in the right place. This is the right time. There is nothing else needed from you except to rest. Follow Unseen Ocean History for more deep ocean mysteries. Take a slow breath in and let it go. You are still here, still resting, still held by the dark and the cold and the vast, patient quiet of the deep ocean. If you have drifted into sleep already, that is exactly right. If you are still here, still listening at the age of wakefulness, still following the words as they move slowly past, that is right too. There is no wrong way to be here tonight. The ocean does not require anything of you. It only asks that you rest. We have come a long way already, down through the sunlit surface waters, through the twilight zone where the light fades and the lanternfish carry their own small stars, through the midnight zone where bioluminescence pulses in the absolute dark, down to the abyssal plain, that vast, still, powdery landscape that covers more than half the surface of this earth, and into the Mariana Trench, the deepest place our planet has made. We have met the Megalodon, the largest predator that ever lived, and followed its story from 19 million years of dominance to its quiet disappearance in a cooling, changing world. And we have asked the question that the deep ocean always asks: what else is down here? Tonight, in this third part of our journey, we are going to try to answer that. Not completely. The ocean does not give complete answers, but partially, carefully, with the same slow attention we have been giving to everything else, because the creatures that live in the deep ocean are among the most extraordinary things on this planet. Not in a dramatic way, not in a way that shouts for attention, but in a quiet, ancient, deeply strange way that takes a little time to fully appreciate. Let your body settle a little deeper as we begin. Let your shoulders drop. Let your hands rest open. Let your jaw release whatever tension it is still holding. The deep ocean is patient, and so are we. There is a fish called the coelacanth. You may have heard of it, but hearing of it and truly understanding what it represents are two different things. The coelacanth, pronounced coelacanth, belongs to a lineage of fish that first appeared in the fossil record approximately 400 million years ago. 400 million years. To understand how long that is, the dinosaurs appeared roughly 230 million years ago. They went extinct 66 million years ago. The entire history of the dinosaurs, from the first small bipedal archosaurs of the Triassic to the last Tyrannosaurus of the late Cretaceous, occupies a span of time that is less than half as long as the coelacanth lineage has existed. The coelacanth's ancestors were swimming in the oceans of this earth before the first amphibians crawled onto land, before the first forests existed, before insects had learned to fly, before almost anything we would recognize as part of the modern world had come into being. And the coelacanth itself, the living animal, the fish that exists today in the deep waters off the coasts of East Africa and Indonesia, is essentially unchanged from its ancient ancestors. When scientists compare the fossilized remains of coelacanths from 300 million years ago with the anatomy of living specimens caught in the 20th and 21st centuries, the differences are minimal. Small variations in scale patterns, slight changes in proportions, nothing fundamental. the same fish. After 300 million years of evolution happening all around it, after mass extinctions that wiped out the majority of species on Earth, after the continents moved and the oceans changed, and the climate cycled through ice ages and tropical warm periods, the coelacanth remained. Essentially the same, in the same dark water, doing the same things. Scientists call animals like this living fossils, a term that is slightly misleading because it implies that the animal has stopped evolving, which is not quite true. But it captures something real, something about the deep ocean's capacity to preserve, to insulate life from the changes happening above, to create conditions so stable, so constant, so unchanging that evolution has no particular pressure to act. If nothing is forcing you to change, you do not change. The coelacanth lives at depths of between 100 and 700 meters, deeper than sunlight reaches, in cold and rocky underwater terrain off steep coastal slopes. It is slow-moving, nocturnal, and almost entirely unknown in terms of its behavior. Until 1938, it was known only from fossils. Scientists believed it had been extinct for 66 million years, a casualty of the same mass extinction that ended the dinosaurs. Then, on the 22nd of December 1938, a museum curator in South Africa named Marjorie Courtenay-Latimer was examining the catch of a local fishing trawler when she noticed something unusual among the fish. A large, blue, strange-looking fish she had never seen before, with thick, fleshy fins unlike anything in a modern fish, with scales like armor plating, with eyes that seemed, she later wrote, to be looking back at her. She contacted a zoologist. He identified it immediately. A coelacanth. Alive. After 66 million years of assumed extinction. Still here. The scientific world reacted with something close to disbelief. A fish presumed extinct for longer than any mammal has existed, not only alive, but apparently thriving, in water no one had thought to look carefully into. The deep ocean had kept its secret for 66 million years. It gave it up because a curious woman in a South African harbour looked carefully at an unexpected fish on a December afternoon. Breathe slowly. Let that story settle. A fish older than the dinosaurs, found alive in a harbour on a summer afternoon. The deep ocean, patient as always, waiting to be noticed. The goblin shark is another creature that should not exist, or rather, it should not exist in the form it does. It should, by any reasonable expectation, have been replaced long ago by something more efficient, more aerodynamic, more adapted to the demands of modern ocean predation. The goblin shark belongs to a family, Mitsucarinidae, whose lineage extends back 125 million years. It looks, as a result, like something that should not be alive. A long, flat, blade-like snout extending far forward from its head, almost like a spatula, or the long bill of a very strange bird. Beneath that snout, a jaw that can project forward out of the face with extraordinary speed, snapping forward to capture prey before the animal has to move its full body close enough to bite. Its skin is pale pink, not grey like most sharks, but a soft, almost delicate pink, because the skin is so thin that the blood vessels beneath it are visible through it. In bright light, it would look almost translucent. Its eyes are small and seem not to rely much on vision. The goblin shark hunts primarily using its rostrum, which is densely packed with electrosensory organs called the ampullae of Lorenzini, sensitive to the tiny electrical fields produced by the muscle contractions of prey animals. It does not need to see. It feels its prey before it reaches them. The goblin shark lives at depths of between 200 and 1,300 meters. It is found in every ocean on Earth. It is almost never seen alive. Only a handful of living specimens have ever been observed by humans, almost always accidentally entangled in deep water trawl nets. We know almost nothing about how it lives, how often it eats, whether it gathers in groups or lives entirely alone, how long it lives, whether it migrates or stays in one deep water territory, or simply drifts wherever the currents take it. It is a 125-million-year-old animal living in the depths of every ocean on Earth, and we know almost nothing about it. The deep ocean does not give up its secrets easily, but it gives us enough to understand the scale of what we do not know. Let your body sink a little deeper into rest. Your breathing is slow and steady, in and out. The rhythm of a sleeping body, the rhythm of the deep ocean. There are more creatures here, patient ones, old ones, strange ones. Take your time with each of them. Let them drift past you like the marine snow drifting down through the midnight zone, slowly, gently, without hurry, each one settling into place. The frilled shark is older still. Its lineage traces back 80 million years. It looks, and there is no gentler way to put this, like a creature from a dream. Long and slender like an eel, but unmistakably a shark, with a lateral line running along its body, with those ancient flat eyes, with the distinctive paired fins. Its mouth is at the front of its head rather than underneath, as in most sharks, a primitive arrangement that hints at how much older its body plan is than the streamlined modern shark form we are more familiar with. Its gills are frilled, ruffled at the edges like the collars of shirts in old paintings. 6 gill slits on each side, rather than the 5 of most modern sharks, each one lined with those distinctive red-brown frills. It lives at depths of up to 1,500 meters. It feeds, scientists believe, by coiling its long body like a snake and then striking forward at prey, engulfing fish and squid in a single swift movement. The frilled shark is so rarely encountered that each sighting is still reported in scientific journals. A live individual filmed in Japan in 2007 was one of only a handful of documented encounters with a living specimen. It swam slowly through the footage, unhurried, indifferent to the camera, moving with the easy confidence of a creature that has not needed to update its body plan in 80 million years. It looked like something that belonged to another era, and it does. It belongs to the Cretaceous, to the age of the dinosaurs. It has outlasted them by 66 million years, unchanged, in the dark. The deep ocean is a museum. Not a museum of dead things, of mounted specimens and labeled bones, but a living museum. A place where evolution slows, where the pressure to change relaxes, where the ancient forms of life can persist long after the surface world has moved on to newer models. While the surface world has cycled through extinction after extinction, the Permian event that killed 96% of all marine species, the Cretaceous event that ended the dinosaurs, the dozens of smaller extinctions in between, the deep ocean has absorbed each one and continued. Changed, but not destroyed. Diminished, but not emptied. Always recovering, always persisting, always finding a way to keep the ancient things alive in the dark. The giant isopod looks, at first glance, like a very large woodlouse. If you have ever found a woodlouse, a pillbug, a Raleigh polly in a garden or under a stone, you know the shape. Segmented body, multiple pairs of legs, the ability to curl into a tight ball when threatened. The giant isopod is that same body plan, that same ancient crustacean architecture, those same segmented plates, those same many-jointed legs, except the giant isopod can reach 45 centimeters in length, the size of a very large house cat. It lives on the abyssal plain at depths of between 500 and 2,000 meters, scavenging the ocean floor for food, fragments of whale falls, dead fish, whatever organic material drifts down from the world above. It is in no hurry. Food is scarce in the abyss, and the giant isopod has evolved to cope with scarcity by becoming extraordinarily patient. In captivity, giant isopods have been recorded going without food for more than 5 years. 5 years. Sitting. Waiting. Metabolizing at a rate so slow it is almost indistinguishable from stillness. Not starving, simply waiting, in the way that the deep ocean always waits, with perfect patience for whatever the surface world will eventually send down. The giant isopod's lineage extends back approximately 160 million years. It first appeared in the Jurassic when the land above the ocean was covered in ferns and tree ferns, when the first small mammals were just beginning to appear in the understory of cycad forests, when the pterosaurs were the largest flying animals on Earth, and it is still here. Unchanged in any fundamental way. Sitting on the ocean floor in the dark, waiting with extraordinary patience for food that comes rarely and unpredictably. There is something deeply restful about that image. An animal that has mastered waiting, that has made patience into a survival strategy so effective it has worked for 160 million years. Let yourself be a little like that tonight. Still, patient. Resting, waiting for nothing in particular, simply present in the dark. The vampire squid is not a vampire. And it is not quite a squid. Its scientific name is Vampiroteuthis infernalis, meaning more or less the vampire squid from hell. Scientists in the early 20th century who first described it were apparently not in a restrained mood. It is, in fact, a unique animal, the only surviving member of its own order, Vampiromorphida. Not a squid, not an octopus. Something between the two, a lineage that diverged from both before either had fully become what it is today. It is small, a maximum of 30 centimeters long, including its arms. It is dark, nearly black in most individuals, though some are reddish-brown. Its arms are connected by a webbing of skin that, when the animal pulls its arms back over its body, forms a cloak-like covering over itself, the origin of the vampire comparison, along with the large red eyes. It lives in the oxygen minimum zone, a layer of the ocean at roughly 600 to 900 meters depth, where dissolved oxygen levels are extremely low. Too low for most animals. Low enough that most predators cannot survive there. The vampire squid uniquely can. It has evolved hemocyanin, a copper-based molecule in its blood that binds oxygen with extraordinary efficiency, allowing it to extract enough from water that is nearly depleted of it. And it moves as little as possible, keeping its metabolic rate extremely low, conserving every unit of energy with great precision. It does not hunt. This is perhaps the most surprising thing about it. Despite the fearsome name, the vampire squid is not a predator. It does not chase prey or catch fish or attack other animals. Instead, it feeds on marine snow. It extends long, sticky filaments from its body, sometimes longer than its entire body length, and trails them through the water, collecting the constant, gentle fall of organic particles drifting down from above. Dead plankton, fecal pellets, fragments of whatever lived and died at the surface. It gathers this material, forms it into mucus balls, and consumes it, a creature named for a monster living on the equivalent of dust. In the oxygen-depleted middle depths of every ocean on Earth, hidden from its predators in water too depleted of oxygen for most of them to enter. Patient. Slow. Ancient. The vampire squid's lineage is over 300 million years old. It predates the first dinosaurs by 60 million years. It predates the Permian extinction, the greatest mass extinction in Earth's history, which killed 96% of all marine species by more than 50 million years. It survived the Permian, the Triassic, the Jurassic, the Cretaceous, the extinction that ended the dinosaurs, the ice ages, every catastrophe the planet has produced. Quietly. In the oxygen-depleted dark, collecting dust, waiting, breathe slowly, in and out. Your body is very heavy now, not uncomfortably so. The heaviness of a body that has let go of the day. The heaviness of muscles that have stopped holding. The heaviness of a person who is, perhaps without fully knowing it, very close to sleep. The stories continue. You do not need to follow every word. Let them come and go like the sounds of a distant ocean, present enough to hold the silence, distant enough to let sleep find you. The Pacific sleeper shark deserves its name. It moves, at rest in the cold water it prefers, at approximately 1/4 kilometer per hour. 1/4 kilometer per hour. Walking pace is roughly 5 kilometers per hour. The Pacific sleeper shark moves at 1/20th of walking pace. Slower than a person strolling without any particular destination. Slower than the pace at which most people browse in a bookshop. It is one of the largest sharks in the ocean, reaching lengths of up to 7 meters, and it is almost entirely inactive. It lives at depths of up to 2,000 meters in near-freezing water, where its metabolic rate slows to a pace that barely qualifies as living by surface standards. It is, in almost every measurable sense, doing as little as possible at all times. And it works. The Pacific sleeper shark's close relative, the Greenland shark, another large cold water, deep-dwelling species with the same unhurried approach to existence, holds a remarkable distinction. It is the longest-lived vertebrate on Earth. Scientists studying Greenland sharks in the North Atlantic used a technique called radiocarbon dating on the crystalline tissue at the center of the eye lens, tissue that forms before birth and remains chemically unchanged throughout the animal's life. The oldest individual they dated was approximately 512 years old. 512 years. Born somewhere around the year 1504, when Leonardo da Vinci was still alive, when the Sistine Chapel had just been completed, when the first Europeans were beginning to cross the Atlantic in wooden ships looking for a route to Asia. This shark was already swimming in the cold water of the North Atlantic. And it is still swimming there today. 500 years of slow, cold, patient existence in the dark. Moving at 1/4 kilometer per hour, conserving everything, doing as little as possible, outlasting everything. There is a lesson in that, not a complicated one. The creatures that last longest in the deep ocean are not the fastest, or the strongest, or the most aggressive. They are the most patient, the most still, the most willing to do less, conserve more, and wait for whatever the ocean will eventually bring. 500 years of that approach, still alive. Still moving at 1/4 kilometer per hour through very cold, very dark water. Still waiting. The hydrothermal vents deserve our attention again tonight. We mentioned them earlier, those chimneys of superheated water rising from cracks in the ocean floor, surrounded by dense clusters of life in a world of otherwise sparse darkness. But the full story of the hydrothermal vents is stranger and more extraordinary than a passing mention can convey. Hydrothermal vents were first discovered in 1977. Before that, scientists believed the deep ocean floor was essentially a desert, cold, dark, and nearly lifeless, too remote from the photosynthetic energy of the surface to support significant biological communities. Then, in the spring of 1977, a team of scientists aboard the research vessel Nor lowered a submersible called Alvin to the floor of the Galapagos Rift, a section of the mid-ocean ridge system in the eastern Pacific, roughly 2,500 meters below the surface. They expected to find barren rock, perhaps some scattered organisms, the usual sparse abyssal fauna. Instead, they found an oasis, towering chimneys of rock built from minerals precipitated out of superheated water heated to over 300 degrees Celsius by the volcanic activity beneath the ocean floor. Emerging through cracks in the crust and immediately beginning to cool in the surrounding near-freezing ocean. And around those chimneys clustered so densely that the scientists in the submersible initially struggled to understand what they were seeing. Life. Tube worms 2 meters long, swaying in the thermal current like pale, boneless trees, white crabs moving carefully across the hot rock, shrimp in thousands, clustered so thickly around the vent opening they formed a living carpet, mussels and clams in dense beds, fish hovering in the warm water above the vent. None of them dependent on sunlight, none of them connected in any way to the photosynthetic energy of the surface. Instead, they were all sustained by chemosynthesis, the process by which certain bacteria use the chemical energy in the hydrogen sulfide and other compounds pouring out of the vent to produce organic matter. Not sunlight as the energy source. Chemistry. The bacteria form the base of an entirely separate food chain, one that has no connection to the sun at all. The tube worms harbor symbiotic bacteria inside their bodies. The shrimp and crabs feed on bacterial mats on the rock surface. The fish feed on the shrimp and crabs, a complete ecosystem, powered by the Earth's own interior heat, functioning in total darkness 2.5 kilometers below the ocean surface. Before 1977, biologists had believed that all life on Earth ultimately depended on the sun. The hydrothermal vents proved otherwise. Life does not need sunlight. Life needs energy. And the Earth produces energy in ways that have nothing to do with the star at the center of our solar system. That discovery changed biology in ways that are still being worked through. It changed the way scientists think about where life might exist elsewhere in the universe. If life can thrive in total darkness under crushing pressure sustained by chemical energy from the Earth's interior, then the moons of other planets, with their subsurface oceans heated by tidal forces, become candidates for life in a way they were not before 1977. Europa, Enceladus, Titan, moons with liquid water beneath their icy surfaces, heated by the gravitational pull of their parent planets in total darkness, under pressure, with conditions similar in many ways to the environment around a hydrothermal vent on Earth. Life in the deep ocean did not just change our understanding of this planet, it changed our understanding of what is possible. Your breathing is very slow now. Your body is very still. Whatever was occupying your mind when this began, whatever the day left behind in you, it is very far away now. Further away with each breath, smaller, less important, less present. There is only this, the deep ocean, the dark, the cold, the slow, careful stories of the creatures that have been here since before any human thought was ever thought. Rest here for a moment, without words, without story. Just the dark, and the quiet, and the soft, constant pressure of the water holding you from every side. The sperm whale does not belong to the deep ocean, but it visits. The sperm whale, the largest toothed animal that has ever existed on Earth, is a surface animal. It breathes air. It gives birth at the surface. It lives most of its social life in the warm upper layers of the ocean, in family groups led by matriarchs who know the locations of productive feeding grounds across thousands of miles of open sea. But it dives. Deeper than almost any other animal on Earth. Sperm whales regularly reach depths of 1,000 to 2,000 meters on their foraging dives. The deepest confirmed dive on record is 3,800 meters, nearly 4 kilometers below the surface. They can hold their breath for up to 90 minutes. 90 minutes of descent, hunting, and ascent sustained on a single breath taken at the surface. During these dives, the sperm whale enters the midnight zone, the world of absolute darkness, the world of the giant squid, because that is what the sperm whale is hunting down there. The giant squid, Architeuthis dux, and its even larger relative, the colossal squid, Mesenecateuthis hamiltoni. Both animals of enormous size and remarkable capability. Both animals that live in total darkness at depths where few other large predators can follow. The sperm whale hunts them with echolocation, a system of biological sonar so powerful and precise that it can detect the shape and position of a squid in total darkness at hundreds of meters range through solid water. It produces clicks, the loudest sound produced by any animal on Earth, and listens to the echoes that return from the objects they encounter. From the pattern of those echoes, it constructs a three-dimensional image of everything around it. Shape, size, distance, movement. All from sound, all in the dark. The battle between sperm whale and giant squid, when it occurs, is one of the most extreme encounters in the animal kingdom. We have never directly witnessed it. We know it happens only from the evidence, the circular sucker scars left on sperm whale skin by the squid's arms, squid beaks found in sperm whale stomachs, squid tentacles occasionally recovered from whales' intestines. A fight between a 20-meter whale and a 10-meter squid, in total darkness, 3 kilometers below the surface. Witnessed by nothing and no one, recorded only in the scars both animals carry afterward. The deep ocean holds these encounters the way it holds everything else. Quietly, in the dark, without witnesses. As if the events of the surface world, the noise, the documentation, the constant human need to record and know and understand everything, have simply never reached here. And in a sense, they haven't. Not fully. Not yet. The Dumbo octopus is among the gentlest-looking creatures in the deep ocean. It takes its name from the ear-like fins that extend from the top of its mantle, one on each side, which it flaps slowly and continuously to propel itself through the water. They do look, unmistakably, like the ears of the Disney elephant. The Dumbo octopus is found at depths of up to 7,000 meters, deeper than almost any other octopus species. It is small, most individuals are between 20 and 30 centimeters long, and it moves very slowly, hovering just above the ocean floor, trailing its arms below it. It feeds on small crustaceans and worms that live in the sediment, hovering above them and then dropping down to engulf them. Its life appears to consist almost entirely of slow hovering, occasional feeding and reproduction. A cycle so simple and unhurried, it seems almost like a philosophical statement about what is possible when the demands of the world are reduced to their minimum. The Dumbo octopus cannot survive at the surface. Bring it up from the deep, and the pressure change kills it. It exists entirely and completely in the dark, cold, high-pressure world of the extreme deep. A world that would instantly destroy most surface life, but which the Dumbo octopus inhabits as easily and naturally as a bird inhabits the air. There are at least 13 species of Dumbo octopus currently known. Scientists suspect there are more. Each deep-sea expedition that reaches sufficient depth has a reasonable chance of finding a new one, a new shape, a new color pattern, a new set of adaptations to the specific conditions of one particular deep ocean environment. The deep ocean is not a single environment. It is many environments, different depths, different temperatures, different chemical compositions, different current patterns, different distances from land and from the surface productivity that sends marine snow drifting down. And in each of those different environments, evolution has found different solutions, different adaptations, different body plans, different metabolisms, different strategies for finding food and avoiding predation and reproducing in the cold and the dark. 13 species of Dumbo octopus and counting, each one hovering slowly in the dark of a slightly different deep ocean world. Each one a unique answer to a unique set of challenges. Life finds a way. It always finds a way. We have been in the deep a long time tonight. You have followed us here, down through the twilight zone and the midnight zone and the abyssal plain and the walls of the Mariana Trench, and we have met extraordinary creatures along the way. The coelacanth, unchanged for 300 million years. The goblin shark, hunting with electricity in the dark. The frilled shark, swaying through the Cretaceous deep as it sways through the deep today. The giant isopod, waiting in perfect patience for a meal that may not come for months. The vampire squid, collecting dust in oxygen-depleted water, surviving on practically nothing. The Greenland shark, 5 centuries old and still moving at 1/4 kilometer per hour through the cold Atlantic dark. The sperm whale, diving 3 kilometers on a single breath to fight a giant squid in the dark. The Dumbo octopus, hovering gently above the sediment, patient and soft and entirely suited to the extreme world it calls home. Each one a different answer to the same question. How do you survive in the dark? The answer the deep ocean gives again and again in species after species is the same. Slowly, quietly, with patience, with extreme efficiency, with the understanding that the less energy you spend, the longer you last. The deep ocean is not a place of urgency. Nothing down here is in a hurry. Nothing down here is anxious. Nothing down here is striving or competing or performing. Everything is simply present, moving at its own pace, following its own rhythms, taking what the ocean offers and requiring nothing more. Let that be enough for you tonight. What the ocean offers is enough. What this night offers is enough. What rest offers is enough. You do not need more than this. Just the dark, the quiet, the slow and ancient stories of the creatures that have been here, patient and strange and extraordinary, since long before any human being ever drew breath. There is one more creature we should meet before this part of our journey ends. One that lives at the very edge of the possible. In the sediment of the abyssal plain, in that soft, pale, ancient powder that has been accumulating on the ocean floor for hundreds of millions of years, there are organisms that should not, by any reasonable standard, be alive. They are bacteria. Single-celled organisms far too small to see without a microscope, living in the sediment at depths of several kilometers, in water so cold and under pressure so extreme that by surface standards the conditions are utterly inhospitable. Scientists drilling sediment cores from the abyssal plain have extracted bacteria from layers dated at over 100 million years old. 100 million years. These bacteria were not preserved in the way that fossils are preserved. Their cells were not mineralized or replaced by stone. They were alive. When brought back to the laboratory and given nutrients, they began to grow, to reproduce, to go about the business of being alive. They had been alive in the sediment for 100 million years, not in a state of suspended animation, not frozen or dried or otherwise preserved in any way we normally associate with long-term survival, just metabolizing, extremely slowly. So slowly that their metabolism was barely distinguishable from the chemistry of the sediment around them, but alive, continuously, for 100 million years. They were alive in the late Cretaceous. They were alive when the asteroid that ended the dinosaurs struck the Earth. They were alive through every ice age, every mass extinction, every catastrophe the surface world experienced. Down in the dark, in the cold, in the sediment, they simply continued. Slowly. Without urgency, without any awareness of the extraordinary distance of time they had crossed. The deep ocean keeps things alive in ways we are only beginning to understand. It is the oldest, most patient, most enduring environment on Earth. And it has been waiting with those 100 million year old bacteria in its sediment, with its frilled sharks and its goblin sharks and its vampire squids and its giant isopods, for us to come and pay attention. We are paying attention now. Slowly, quietly, in the dark. Let your breathing slow to its deepest, most natural rhythm. There is nothing left to do tonight. Nothing to solve, nothing to prepare for, nothing to remember. The deep ocean is still around you, still dark, still cold, still full of creatures that have been here since before the world as we know it existed, moving slowly, resting deeply, waiting with extraordinary patience in the oldest darkness on Earth. You are resting with them now, in the same dark, at the same pace, with the same patient quiet. Let sleep come if it wants to. It is welcome here. The story will still be here when you wake. The deep ocean will still be here. The ancient creatures will still be going about their slow, extraordinary business in the dark below the dark. Nothing will have changed. Nothing needs to. Follow Unseen Motion History for more deep ocean mysteries. Take a breath, slow and full. Let your chest rise gently, and then fall, and then be still for a moment before the next one comes. You are still here, still deep, still held by the dark and the cold, and the immense, patient quiet of the ocean. If sleep has already found you, let it keep you. If you are still here at the edge, still listening, still following the slow current of words through the dark, that is right too. There is no destination tonight, only the journey down, only the dark, only the quiet. We are going deeper now, deeper than the coelacanth swims, deeper than the goblin shark hunts, deeper than the sperm whale dives on its longest, most extraordinary breath. We are going all the way to the bottom, to Challenger Deep, to the deepest point on the surface of this Earth, nearly 11,000 meters below where we began. A descent that would take hours in a submersible moving downward through the dark at a pace slower than a person walks, watching the pressure gauges climb and the temperature drop, and the blackness outside the porthole remain constant and total and entirely unchanged. But we have already made most of the journey. We have passed through the sunlit zone and the twilight zone and the midnight zone and the abyssal plain. We have entered the Mariana Trench, where the ocean floor dropped suddenly and steeply away beneath us. We have been descending along the trench walls for some time now. The bottom is close. Let it come slowly. There is no hurry. The bottom of the ocean has been waiting for a very long time. It can wait a little longer. To understand what Challenger Deep is, it helps to understand how the Mariana Trench was made. The Earth's outer shell, its crust, and the rigid upper layer of the mantle beneath it is not a single continuous surface. It is broken into sections, large, irregular pieces fitting together roughly like the cracked shell of a hard-boiled egg. Scientists call these sections tectonic plates, and they move. Not quickly. Not in any way you could observe directly even over an entire human lifetime. They move at roughly the speed at which your fingernails grow, a few centimeters per year. But over millions of years, a few centimeters per year becomes hundreds of kilometers, and the consequences of plates moving hundreds of kilometers, colliding, separating, sliding past each other, are the largest geological features on Earth. Mountains, ocean ridges, volcanic chains, and ocean trenches. The Mariana Trench was made by a collision. In the western Pacific Ocean, two plates meet, the Pacific Plate, which underlies most of the Pacific Ocean, and the Mariana Plate, a smaller plate that sits beneath the western edge of the Pacific. The Pacific Plate is older and denser. When two plates collide, the denser one goes down, bending at the edge, diving beneath the lighter plate, being pulled into the Earth's mantle by its own weight in a process called subduction. The Pacific Plate has been subducting beneath the Mariana Plate for roughly 50 million years. 50 million years of one vast section of the Earth's crust diving slowly beneath another, bending downward, being consumed by the heat of the mantle below. And as it bends, the ocean floor above the bending edge is pulled down with it, dragged downward, creating a long, narrow depression in the ocean floor that deepens over millions of years as the subduction continues. This is the Mariana Trench. Not a crack, not a gap, but a place where the Earth is actively consuming itself, where one part of the planet's surface is being pulled slowly but irresistibly into the planet's interior, millimeter by millimeter, year by year, for 50 million years. At the deepest point of that consuming, bending, descending place, at the very bottom of the curve, is Challenger Deep. Nearly 11,000 meters below the surface of the Pacific Ocean, the lowest point on the surface of this Earth. The name Challenger Deep comes from a ship. Challenger, a British Royal Navy corvette converted into a scientific research vessel, set out from Portsmouth Harbour in December 1872 on what would become the world's first dedicated oceanographic expedition. For 3.5 years, the Challenger and its crew of scientists sailed nearly 70,000 nautical miles across every ocean on Earth, stopping at hundreds of stations to lower instruments into the deep, thermometers, water samplers, dredges to scrape the ocean floor, and most importantly, a weighted line to measure depth. They called it sounding, lowering a weighted rope until it reached the bottom, then measuring how much rope had gone down. It was slow, painstaking work. Each sounding took hours. The rope had to be coiled and lowered by hand, meter by meter, the crew watching the line carefully for the slight change in tension that indicated the weight had reached the bottom. On March 23, 1875, in the western Pacific, a few hundred miles east of the Mariana Islands, the crew of Challenger lowered their sounding line and kept lowering it. The line ran out to 4,000 meters, to 5,000, to 6,000, to 7,000, to 8,000. At 8,184 meters, the weight touched bottom, the deepest point ever measured, the first indication that the ocean had depths that exceeded anything previously imagined. They recorded it carefully in their logs, noted the position, moved on. The place was given no particular name at the time, just a number in a log, a measurement, a fact. Later, it would be named for the ship that found it. Challenger Deep, the name of a discovery that would take another 85 years to be fully appreciated. The first human beings to reach the bottom of Challenger Deep descended on the 23rd of January 1960. Their names were Don Walsh, a United States Navy lieutenant, and Jacques Piccard, a Swiss engineer and ocean explorer. The vessel that carried them was called the Trieste, a bathyscaphe, a type of deep-diving submersible that used gasoline for buoyancy, the way a blimp uses helium. Gasoline is lighter than water and does not compress under pressure, making it ideal for providing lift at extreme depths. The Trieste was not graceful, it was not fast, it was a large, ungainly vessel, a float of gasoline above and a steel sphere below, just large enough for two people to sit inside, barely. The descent took 4 hours and 48 minutes, nearly 5 hours of slow downward movement through the dark, the two men sitting in a steel sphere barely 2 meters in diameter, watching their instruments, listening to the sounds of the pressure increasing around them, descending through zones of water that no human being had ever entered. At 9,000 meters, one of the outer plexiglass windows cracked. The sound, a sharp report like a gunshot, transmitted instantly through the metal of the sphere, jolted both men. They checked their instruments. The sphere was intact. The crack was in an outer viewing pane, not in the pressure hull itself. They continued descending. At 10,916 meters, the depth they recorded at the bottom, the Trieste settled into the soft sediment of Challenger Deep with a gentle bump. Don Walsh and Jacques Piccard had reached the bottom of the world. They were the first. They stayed for 20 minutes. 20 minutes at the deepest point on the surface of this earth, in a steel sphere barely large enough to stand up in, surrounded by pressure equivalent to the weight of 50 commercial aircraft pressing in from every direction. In those 20 minutes, Jacques Piccard looked out through the remaining viewing port into the darkness of Challenger Deep and saw a fish, a flatfish. He described it as resembling a sole, lying on the sediment at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. At nearly 11,000 meters, under pressure that, at the surface, would be incomprehensible. In water, just above freezing. In total darkness. A fish, lying on the bottom, resting. Later scientists have questioned whether what Piccard saw was indeed a fish, or perhaps a sea cucumber or another invertebrate. The brief observation and the limited lighting of the Trieste makes certainty impossible, but the possibility stands. The possibility that the first human beings to reach the deepest point on Earth looked out of their porthole and saw something already there, resting peacefully on the bottom, entirely unbothered by the arrival of the strange metal sphere that had just descended from the surface world. Life at the bottom of the world, already there, already home, already resting. After their 20 minutes, Walsh and Piccard released the iron-shot ballast that had weighted the Trieste downward. The gasoline float lifted them. They began the long ascent back toward the surface. 3 hours and 15 minutes later, they emerged into Pacific daylight. They had been gone from the surface for just under 9 hours. They had been at the bottom of the world for 20 minutes. The whole of human civilization, every city ever built, every war ever fought, every work of art ever created, every word ever written, had happened in a thin film at the top of this planet. And for most of human history, no human being had ever gone more than a few tens of meters below the surface of the ocean. Walsh and Picard went 11 kilometers in a steel sphere the size of a small bathroom in 1960, without GPS, without satellite communication, without any of the technology that we now consider basic. They went because they wanted to know what was there. And what they found at the deepest point on Earth was silence, cold, darkness, soft pale set, and perhaps a fish resting quietly on the bottom, living its life in a place that humans had never seen and would not see again for more than 50 years. The second humans to reach Challenger Deep descended in March 2012, 52 years after Walsh and Picard. The name of the person who made that dive is James Cameron, the filmmaker, the same person who directed Titanic and Avatar. Cameron descended alone in a submersible he had helped design himself, the Deep-Sea Challenger, a vessel that could descend much faster than the Trieste and that carried sophisticated cameras and scientific collection equipment. He reached the bottom in 2 hours and 36 minutes, half the time the Trieste had taken. He stayed for nearly 3 hours, 3 hours at the bottom of Challenger Deep, alone in a submersible, filming and collecting samples, the first solo dive to the deepest point on Earth, and the first extended exploration of the bottom since 1960. What he found there, and what the scientific team analysing his footage and samples found afterward, was not emptiness. The sediment was alive with microbial communities, foraminifera, single-celled organisms encased in intricate calcium carbonate shells were present in large numbers. Small amphipods, crustaceans, distant relatives of the giant isopod were visible on the sediment surface. And in his water samples, scientists later found something unexpected: microplastics. At the bottom of the Mariana Trench, at the deepest point on the surface of this Earth, in a place where no human being had stood, where the only light that had ever reached was the light carried by submersibles on 3 brief visits over 50 years, the fingerprints of human industry had already arrived, carried by ocean currents. Filtered down through the water column, settling into the sediment of Challenger Deep alongside the foraminifera and the amphipods and the ancient microbial communities that had been living there for millions of years. The deep ocean is not untouched. Even here, even at the bottom of the world, the surface has left its mark. That thought is not meant to disturb your rest tonight. It is simply the truth of where we are in this particular moment in the history of this planet. A moment of great change, a moment when the surface world has grown large enough and active enough to reach even the deepest, most remote places on Earth. The deep ocean has survived much greater disturbances than this. It survived the Permian extinction, the Cretaceous extinction, the closing of the Tethys Sea, the formation of the Isthmus of Panama. It will continue, as it has always continued, slowly, patiently, in the dark. Let your breathing slow, let the weight of the story settle around you, gentle and heavy. In And out. You are still here, still resting. The bottom of the world is still around you. Soft sediment, cold water, the immense quiet of a place that has been here for 50 million years and will be here for 50 million more. Rest in that continuity. The long, slow continuity of the deep. The sounds of the deep ocean deserve their own moment of attention. We have spoken much about its darkness, its cold, its pressure. But sound is perhaps the most important sense in the deep ocean, the one that most animals rely on most completely, because light is absent and chemical signals travel slowly and unpredictably. Sound travels through water approximately 4 times faster than it travels through air. At the surface, sound moves at roughly 340 meters per second. In seawater, at depth, it moves at approximately 1,500 meters per second. This means that sound produced in the ocean carries information across extraordinary distances with relatively little loss. A blue whale calling in the North Atlantic can potentially be heard by another blue whale in the North Pacific. The ocean is full of sound. It is simply sound that the human ear, accustomed to the frequencies of air and the scale of land, does not easily comprehend. The deep ocean has its own acoustic layer, the SOFAR channel, which stands for sound, fixing and ranging. It sits at roughly 600 to 900 meters depth in most oceans, coincidentally approximately the same depth range as the vampire squid's oxygen minimum zone. At this depth, a specific combination of temperature, salinity and pressure creates a layer in which sound waves become trapped, bent back toward the channel by the way the water's properties change above and below it, and can travel extraordinary distances with very little energy loss. Sound in the SOFAR channel can travel halfway around the world. Scientists have recorded explosions set off in the SOFAR channel off Australia and detected the sound waves in the North Atlantic. The same explosion, its acoustic energy bouncing back and forth across thousands of miles of ocean, detectable on instruments in places its source could not have imagined. The blue whale uses the SOFAR channel. Its long, low calls, infrasound, frequencies below the range of human hearing, more felt than heard, travel in this acoustic layer across thousands of miles of open ocean. A blue whale off the coast of Chile may be calling to another blue whale near the shores of New Zealand, exchanging information, locating each other, maintaining contact across a distance greater than the width of many continents. The deep ocean is not silent. It is full of conversation. In frequencies and at distances that exceed what any human ear or human mind can easily encompass. Close your eyes a little further. Imagine that sound. Not heard, felt, a deep, slow pressure wave moving through you from one side to the other, carrying information from somewhere 10,000 miles away, from an animal that has never seen the surface world and never will. A message from the deep, addressed to no one in particular. And to everyone who is listening carefully enough, there are sounds in the deep ocean that science has not fully explained. One of the most famous is called the bloop. In 1997, the United States National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, recorded an extremely powerful ultra-low frequency sound in the South Pacific Ocean. The sound was unlike anything in their databases. It rose rapidly in frequency over approximately 1 minute, and it was powerful enough to be detected by 2 hydrophone arrays more than 5,000 kilometers apart. Scientists gave it a name, the bloop. For the quality of the sound on the recordings, a deep, low, rising frequency that, when sped up to a range audible to the human ear, does indeed sound something like a very large, very slow bloop. It was, when first recorded, immediately intriguing. detectable across 5,000 kilometers of ocean that implied a source of sound louder than any known biological source, louder than a blue whale, louder than any known animal. The suggestions came quickly. Unknown giant animal. Megalodon. Some unnamed creature of the deep that was producing a sound of biological origin, but at a scale beyond anything in the known catalogue of ocean life. The actual explanation, established by subsequent analysis, is less dramatic but in its own way more interesting. The bloop was almost certainly the sound of ice, specifically a large icequake. The fracturing and movement of a massive section of Antarctic ice shelf, producing a long, low, powerful acoustic signature that propagated northward through the SOFAR Channel for thousands of miles. Ice. Cracking. At the bottom of the world. Heard 5,000 kilometers away. But the episode illustrates something important. The deep ocean is full of sounds we do not yet fully understand. Our hydrophone networks, for all their extent, are not comprehensive. There are regions of the deep ocean, particularly in the Southern Ocean and parts of the Pacific, where our acoustic coverage is thin. There are sounds happening in the deep ocean right now that no human instrument is recording. Conversations between animals we may not yet know exist. The acoustic signatures of geological events in parts of the ocean floor we have never directly surveyed. Perhaps the calls of creatures that have evolved to use the SOFAR channel in ways we have not yet imagined. The deep ocean keeps its sounds as carefully as it keeps its creatures. Most of them have not yet been heard. The pressure at Challenger Deep is 1,096 atmospheres. 1,096 times the pressure at the surface. This number is large enough that it becomes somewhat meaningless without context. So let us try to find the right context. A standard car tire is inflated to approximately 2.5 atmospheres of pressure. A scuba tank contains air at approximately 200 atmospheres. The pressure at Challenger Deep is 5 times greater than the pressure inside a scuba tank. If you took an ordinary foam cup, the kind used for coffee, and attached it to a submersible descending to Challenger Deep, it would return from that depth shrunk to the size of a small dice. The air trapped in the foam bubbles would be compressed by the surrounding pressure into a fraction of its original volume. The cup would become tiny and hard, a miniature version of itself, all the air squeezed out. Scientists do this sometimes. They attach foam cups decorated with drawings to the outside of their submersibles, send them down, and retrieve miniaturized versions. A small ritual, a way of making the abstract pressure of the deep ocean into something visible and concrete. The animals that live at this depth do not have foam cups inside them. They do not have air pockets or gas-filled cavities of any kind. Their cells are filled with water, incompressible, the same density as the water surrounding them, and their biochemistry is adapted at the molecular level to function under forces that would destroy any surface organism. Their enzymes, the proteins that drive all the chemical reactions of life, have evolved to be flexible and functional under pressure that would denature and disable any equivalent surface protein. Their cell membranes incorporate different types of fatty acids than surface animals, more fluid, more flexible, maintaining the right consistency under extreme compression. Life at Challenger Deep is not merely surviving under pressure. It has rebuilt itself at the molecular level to call that pressure home. The amphipods at the bottom of the Mariana Trench do not experience the pressure as pressure. It is simply the nature of the world they live in. The only world they have ever known. The world for which every part of them, every cell, every enzyme, every membrane has been exquisitely tailored by millions of years of evolution. Home. 11 kilometers below the surface, in the cold and the dark and the crushing pressure. Home. Let your body be heavy. Let it sink. Not into pressure or cold or dark, but into the surface you are lying on, which is warm and still and entirely safe. Let the weight of your body press downward. Gently. Completely. Without resistance. Your shoulders, your back, your hips, your legs, your heels, all of it pressing downward, all of it releasing, all of it letting go. The deep ocean is still around you, but you are resting in it, not fighting it, floating in the dark the way the amphipods rest on the sediment at the bottom of Challenger Deep, naturally, without effort, entirely suited to where you are. This is where you are supposed to be tonight. In the dark, in the quiet, resting. The Mariana Trench is not the only deep trench in the world's oceans. It is simply the deepest. Around the Pacific Ocean, which sits in a basin ringed by subduction zones, giving rise to the geological phenomenon sometimes called the Ring of Fire, there are many trenches. The Tonga Trench, to the south, reaches a depth of over 10,800 meters, second only to the Mariana. The Philippine Trench, the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench, the Japan Trench, the Izu-Ogasawara Trench, each one a scar in the ocean floor where one plate is sliding beneath another, each one a place of extraordinary depth and extraordinary pressure, each one home to communities of animals adapted to its specific conditions. In the Atlantic Ocean, there are fewer trenches. The Atlantic is widening, not narrowing, as the mid-Atlantic ridge pushes the Americas away from Europe and Africa. But the Puerto Rico Trench reaches over 8,000 meters, the deepest point in the Atlantic Ocean. And in the Indian Ocean, the Java Trench plunges to over 7,000 kilometers, a scar left by the same tectonic processes that are slowly pushing India northward into Asia, building the Himalayas a few millimeters every year. Every ocean, every deep, every trench. Life, not abundant life, not diverse life by the standards of a coral reef or a kelp forest, but life. Persistent, patient, extraordinary life, built for conditions that the surface world cannot sustain and cannot easily imagine. In every deep place we have looked, we have found living things. In every extreme environment on this planet, the deep ocean trenches, the hydrothermal vents, the hot springs of Yellowstone, the frozen lakes under the Antarctic ice sheet, the salt flats where almost nothing else survives, there is life. This planet is full of life. Not just on its surface, in the places we can easily see. In its depths, in its extremes, in every corner and crack and margin where any energy at all is available to sustain a living process. The Earth is, as far as we currently know, the most alive object in the universe. And most of that life is in the ocean. And most of the ocean is deep, and most of the deep is unexplored. We are living on a planet we have barely begun to understand. That thought, which might in another context feel overwhelming, feels tonight like something else. Like wonder. Like the particular peace that comes from knowing that the world is larger and stranger and more extraordinary than any map we have yet made of it. Like the knowledge that there is always more to discover. Always more to understand, always more dark water, full of ancient creatures, waiting patiently to be seen. In the dark of Challenger Deep, the sediment is different from the sediment elsewhere on the abyssal plain. In much of the deep ocean, the sediment is rich in the calcium carbonate shells of foraminifera, tiny creatures that live near the surface and, when they die, drift slowly downward to accumulate on the ocean floor. But at depths below approximately 4,500 meters, the pressure is high enough that calcium carbonate dissolves. The shells of the foraminifera, falling through the deep water, begin to dissolve before they reach the bottom. At extreme depths, in the trenches at Challenger Deep, they dissolve almost entirely. The sediment at the very bottom is therefore different. Older, darker, rich in silica from the shells of diatoms and radiolarians, organisms whose cases are made of silicon dioxide rather than calcium carbonate, and which do not dissolve at depth. Mixed with clay, the finest particles of rock eroded from the continents over millions of years and carried by rivers to the sea, where the finest particles settle so slowly that they drift for years before coming to rest on the deep ocean floor and mixed with something else. Cosmic dust. Tiny particles of extraterrestrial material, fragments of meteorites, interplanetary dust collected by the Earth's gravity as it moves through space, fall into the ocean along with everything else. On the abyssal plane, they are mixed in with the biological material and become indistinguishable. But in the deepest sediments, where biological material is sparse, scientists have isolated and identified these extraterrestrial particles. The sediment at the bottom of the Mariana Trench contains material that came from space, from the asteroid belt, from the surfaces of other planets, from the cold interplanetary space between the worlds of our solar system, mixed in with the ancient clay and the silica shells, sitting quietly at the bottom of the deepest place on Earth. The bottom of the ocean touches space, the deepest and the highest, the most remote and the most distant, all meeting quietly in the soft pale sediment at 11,000 meters. Rest with that. The universe in the sediment, space and depth and time all together in the cold and the dark at the bottom of the world. The third set of humans to reach Challenger Deep arrived in 2019. A team led by explorer Victor Vescovo descended in a submersible called the Limiting Factor, purpose-built for repeated deep dives, more capable and more robust than anything that had preceded it. Vescovo and his team made multiple dives to Challenger Deep during the Five Deeps expedition, a project to reach the deepest point in each of the world's 5 oceans. On their deepest dive, Vescovo reached a depth of 10,928 meters, slightly deeper than Cameron's 2012 record, and significantly deeper than the original Trieste descent in 1960. They spent hours on the bottom collecting samples, filming, mapping the topography of the trench floor with sonar. What they found confirmed and extended what Cameron's expedition had shown. Microbial life in abundance, amphipods on the sediment, the chemical traces of a surprisingly active biological community for such an extreme environment, and more microplastics, more persistent organic pollutants, more chemical traces of the industrial world above. But also, and this is the thing to hold on to, more life than anyone had expected. More life at the very bottom of the world than the models had predicted. More diversity, more activity, more evidence that the extreme deep is not a dead place but a living one, adapted, persistent, ancient, and continuing. The deep ocean surprises us every time we visit. Not with emptiness, with life. Let your body be completely still now. Not the stillness of holding, of keeping yourself in one position by effort, but the stillness of release, The stillness of a body that has let go of everything it was holding during the day, every tension, every plan, every unfinished thought, and is simply here, simply resting, at the bottom of the world, in the soft sediment, in the cold, in the dark, in the company of creatures that have been here for millions of years, doing exactly what you are doing right now. Resting. Being still. Taking up no more space than necessary. Using no more energy than required. Waiting patiently for whatever the next moment will bring. You are very good at this. You have been doing it all your life, every night, in the dark, your body doing what the ancient creatures of the deep do without thinking, slowing down, cooling slightly, reducing all the processes that the waking day requires, finding the deepest, most restful version of yourself. That version is here now. It was always here, in the dark, in the quiet, waiting for you to come down and find it. The Mariana Trench will still be here in 50 million years. The subduction that created it will continue. The Pacific Plate will keep diving beneath the Mariana Plate, millimeter by millimeter, year by year. The trench will continue to deepen. Or the dynamics will shift and the trench will migrate. The continents will move to new positions, the ocean basins will change shape. In 50 million years, the face of this planet will be unrecognizable. Australia will have collided with Southeast Asia, Africa will have pushed further into Europe, the Atlantic Ocean will have widened, mountains will have risen and eroded and risen again. And somewhere, in whatever ocean exists, in whatever configuration the tectonic plates have reached, life will be in the deep, patient and ancient and persistent, in the cold and the dark, doing what it has always done, continuing. Tonight is a very small moment in that very long story. You are a very small part of that very long story. And yet here you are, resting, breathing, listening to the story of the deep ocean on a night that belongs entirely to rest. That is enough. More than enough. It is, in fact, everything that tonight requires. Let the darkness of the deep ocean and the darkness behind your eyelids become one. Let the cold of the deep water and the comfortable coolness of the air around you blend together. Let the quiet of Challenger Deep, that extraordinary, pressure-filled, ancient quiet, settle into the quiet of the room where you are resting. They are not so different. In both places, the world outside has grown distant. The noise has faded. The light is low or gone entirely. The pace of things has slowed to its most essential. In both places, something old and patient is at work. In the deep ocean, it is the slow metabolism of creatures that have been here since before the first human being drew breath. In you, it is the deep biological rhythm of rest, the same rhythm that your body has followed every night of your life, that your ancestors followed, that every living thing capable of sleep has followed since sleep evolved hundreds of millions of years ago. An ancient thing, a patient thing, a thing that knows exactly what it is doing, even when you are not aware of it. Let it do its work. Let the night do what the night is for. Let the deep do what the deep does best. Keep things. Preserve them. Hold them in the cold and the dark until morning comes. Follow unseen ocean history for more deep ocean mysteries. Breathe. Just breathe. Let the air come in slowly, and let it go slowly, and in the space between, in the small, quiet pause at the bottom of each breath, let everything be still. You are still here, still resting, still held by the dark and the deep, and the vast, patient ocean that has been beneath us all along. We have come a long way together, down through the sunlit surface, through the twilight and the midnight zones, across the abyssal plain, into the Mariana Trench, all the way to Challenger Deep, the lowest point on the surface of this Earth, and back up, slowly through the story of what lives there and how it lives and how long it has been living. We have met the Megalodon and watched it disappear. We have met creatures that predate the dinosaurs and are still alive. We have heard the sounds of the deep ocean and touched the silence at the bottom of the world. And now, we are here. In this fifth part of the journey, the part where the story begins to turn, not upward yet, not toward the surface, but inward. Toward the questions that have no answers. Toward the mysteries the ocean is still keeping. Toward the deep and ancient role the ocean plays in the life of this planet, a role so fundamental, so total, so quietly essential, that without it, none of the rest of this story would be possible. Let your body grow a little heavier, a little more still. Let sleep come closer if it wants to. We are going somewhere gentle now. The ocean makes the air you are breathing. This is not a figure of speech. Every second breath you take, every other breath, on average, over the course of your entire life, contains oxygen that was produced not by a forest, not by a meadow, not by any plant on land, but by the ocean. Specifically, by phytoplankton. Phytoplankton are microscopic organisms, too small to see individually with the naked eye, that float in the surface waters of every ocean on Earth. Some are bacteria, some are single-celled algae, some are more complex. But all of them do the same essential thing. They photosynthesize. Using sunlight and carbon dioxide and the mineral nutrients dissolved in the seawater around them, they produce organic carbon, the building blocks of life, and release oxygen as a byproduct. The same process as a tree, or a blade of grass, or a fern, but performed by organisms so small that a single teaspoon of seawater contains millions of them. Performed across the surface of every ocean on Earth in an area of many hundreds of millions of square kilometers. Together, these microscopic organisms produce approximately half of all the oxygen in Earth's atmosphere. Half. Every other breath. The forests of the Amazon, celebrated rightly as the lungs of the Earth, produce approximately 9% of global oxygen. The phytoplankton of the ocean produce roughly 50%. The breath you just took. That slow, quiet, barely conscious breath that your body took without needing to be asked. Half of the oxygen in it came from the ocean. From microscopic organisms in the sunlit surface layer, doing their quiet, essential work, converting sunlight and carbon dioxide into life and air every second of every day in every ocean on Earth, without pause, without rest, without any awareness of the vast importance of what they are doing. You breathe with the ocean tonight, in the most literal sense possible. Every breath, every cell in your body that needs oxygen to function, every heartbeat that carries that oxygen through your bloodstream, sustained in part by the ocean. By the same ocean whose deep waters we have been exploring all night. By the same patient, ancient, extraordinary body of water that holds the coelacanth and the goblin shark and the 500-year-old Greenland shark and the bacteria that have been alive for 100 million years in the sediment of the abyss. The ocean does not know it is keeping you alive. It simply does. As it has kept every air-breathing creature alive since the first oxygen-producing bacteria changed the composition of this planet's atmosphere 2.5 billion years ago. Quietly, without being asked, without requiring anything in return. Breathe. Let the ocean breathe with you. The ocean also controls the climate. Not in a simple way, not in a way that can be summarized in a single sentence or understood with a single image, but in ways so profound and so total that without the ocean's influence, the surface of this planet would be unrecognizable. The ocean covers 71% of the Earth's surface. It absorbs roughly 90% of the excess heat produced by the greenhouse effect. Water has an extraordinary capacity to absorb and store heat, much greater than rock or soil or air. The ocean is, in effect, the planet's thermal battery, absorbing heat during warm periods, releasing it slowly during cool ones, moderating the extremes that would otherwise make large parts of the Earth's surface uninhabitable. The ocean also drives the global circulation of both water and heat, a system of currents so vast and so important that scientists have given it a single name: the thermohaline circulation. Thermohaline, from the Greek for heat and salt. It works like this. In the North Atlantic, warm surface water from the tropics carried north by the Gulf Stream reaches the high latitudes near Greenland and Iceland. There it releases its heat to the cold polar atmosphere, warming northern Europe, keeping cities like London and Oslo and Bergen far milder than their latitudes would otherwise suggest. As the water releases its heat, it cools, and as it cools, it becomes denser. Cold, salty water is the densest water in the ocean, and dense water sinks. This cold, dense water sinks to the bottom of the North Atlantic and begins to flow southward along the ocean floor through the deep basins around the tip of Africa into the Indian and Pacific Oceans. There, over centuries, it slowly warms, rises back toward the surface, and begins the long journey back. The full circuit of the thermohaline circulation, from the surface of the North Atlantic to the deep abyss and back, takes approximately 1,000 years. 1,000 years for a parcel of water to complete a single circuit of the global ocean. The water at the bottom of the ocean right now, the cold, dense, ancient water resting in the abyssal basins, left the surface approximately 1,000 years ago. It was at the surface in the year 1026, when the Vikings were still sailing, when the Song dynasty ruled China, when the great cathedrals of Europe were only beginning to be built. And now it is resting, cold and patient, at the bottom of the ocean, waiting for another several centuries before it will rise again to the surface and begin the cycle once more. The deep ocean is slow in every sense. Its creatures are slow, its geology is slow, its circulation is slow, its memory, the memory stored in its chemistry, its sediment, its temperature profiles, stretches back millions of years. It operates on timescales that dwarf any human institution, any human civilization, any human concern. And yet it touches your life directly, every day, in ways you rarely think about. The temperature of the air outside your window tonight, the humidity, the rainfall patterns of the region where you live, the oxygen in each breath, all of it shaped, in part, by the ocean, by the same dark water we have been exploring all night, by the patient, ancient, extraordinary system that keeps this planet exactly what it needs to be to sustain the extraordinary proliferation of life that covers its surface. Let that thought be the last complex thought of the evening. Just let it rest there unfinished, open-ended. The ocean keeps this planet alive, and tonight, in some small and quiet way, the ocean is keeping you in and out, slow, still, deep. There is a sound the ocean makes that has no agreed name. It was first recorded in 1991 by NOAA hydrophone arrays in the Pacific. It has been recorded many times since. Scientists call it the slowdown. It is an extremely low-frequency sound, lower than almost any other sound recorded in the ocean. It lasts for approximately 7 minutes, during which its frequency decreases slowly and steadily. Low, getting lower. Over 7 minutes. Then stopping. Its source has been identified, almost certainly a sound produced by ice, like the bloop, associated with Antarctic glacial activity, the sound of the continent at the bottom of the world, groaning and shifting and producing acoustic signatures that travel thousands of miles through the SOFAR channel. But knowing the source does not diminish the sound itself. 7 minutes of a frequency so low it would be felt rather than heard. A slow, steady decline. Not a crash, not an explosion, but a long, gradual, unhurried descent from one pitch to another, as if the ocean itself were settling, getting comfortable, lowering its voice as the night deepens. There is another sound called the train. Recorded since the 1960s, its origin was debated for decades. A continuous, narrow band sound, uniform in frequency, persisting for hours at a time. Something like the distant sound of a train on rails, steady, rhythmic, unyielding. Eventually traced to the sound of ocean waves interacting with the ocean floor in specific shallow water environments, a continuous, self-sustaining acoustic signal produced not by any animal or any geological event, but by the fundamental physics of water moving over stone. The ocean making music from nothing but its own motion. From the oldest physics there is, wave and resistance, water and rock, the same interaction that shaped every shoreline on Earth, playing itself out in frequencies too low for the human ear for hours at a time in the darkness of the deep. And there is Julia, another NOAA recording, 1999. A sound of uncertain origin. Unlike the others, not a steady tone, not a gradually changing frequency, something more complex, more irregular, more organic sounding, though its origin has not been confirmed as biological. Named Julia simply because the scientists who first enhanced it to the audible range felt, listening to it, that it sounded like a name, like someone calling out from a very great distance, across a very great depth, in a voice unlike any voice they had heard before. The ocean is full of sounds like this, sounds with names and sounds without names, sounds explained and sounds still being studied. Sounds produced by ice and geology and physics and biology, sometimes overlapping, sometimes indistinguishable, always arriving through thousands of miles of open water carrying information that has been encoded and compressed and transformed by the journey. The ocean speaks constantly in a language that takes time and patience and very sensitive instruments to even begin to understand. Tonight, somewhere in the Pacific, a blue whale is calling. Somewhere in the Southern Ocean, a glacier is carving. A section of ice the size of a city block separating from the shelf and falling into the sea with a sound that will travel northward for days. Somewhere in the Atlantic, the deep circulation is moving, cold, dense water pressing slowly southward along the ocean floor, the geological equivalent of breathing in. All of it happening right now, all of it producing sound. All of it moving through the dark water that covers most of this planet. And here you are, in the quiet, resting, part of the same planet that produces all of this, part of the same story, part of the same extraordinary, improbable, ancient, continuing thing. There are creatures in the deep ocean that science has not yet named. This is not speculation. It is the considered opinion of the scientific community that the majority of deep-sea species remain undescribed. The numbers vary depending on who you ask and what method they use to estimate. But the consensus is that somewhere between 70 and 90% of deep-sea species are unknown to science. Unknown. Not rare, not almost discovered, not suspected, unknown. Living their lives in the dark, doing whatever they do, in an environment we have barely visited, completely outside the catalogue of known life. Every deep-sea expedition returns with new species, not one or two, dozens, sometimes hundreds, once the samples are fully analysed. In 2023, an expedition to the Clarion-Clipperton Zone, a stretch of the Pacific abyssal plain targeted for potential deep-sea mining, returned with samples containing over 5,000 individual organisms. Scientists analysed the DNA of these organisms and found that more than 90% of the species represented were new to science in a single expedition to a single region of the Pacific abyssal plain. More than 90% of the animals collected had never been seen before. New worms, new crustaceans, new mollusks, new echinoderms, relatives of the starfish and sea urchin, but adapted to the deep in forms that no living person had ever described. New life. In a world we thought we were beginning to understand, some of these new species will be formally named and described in scientific papers. Most of them will sit in sample jars in laboratory freezers for years before anyone has the time and resources to analyze them fully. A few will never be formally described. The backlog of undescribed deep-sea specimens already collected is larger than the scientific community currently has the capacity to process. There is more life in the deep ocean than science can currently keep up with. The ocean is always ahead of us, always producing more, always revealing more, always, when we look carefully, showing us something we had not expected. Something new, something strange, something that has been quietly going about its business in the dark for longer than we have been asking questions. Let your thoughts slow now. Let them become less precise, less formed. Let the words you are hearing drift past you like the marine snow drifts past everything in the deep ocean, present, constant, soft, requiring nothing of you except to be there. Your body knows what to do with this hour. It has known since long before any of this began. Let it do its work. The ocean absorbs carbon dioxide. Approximately 30% of the carbon dioxide produced by human activity since the Industrial Revolution has been absorbed by the ocean. 30%. Without the ocean's capacity to absorb carbon dioxide, the amount of greenhouse gas in the atmosphere would be significantly higher than it is, and the warming effect would be proportionally greater. The ocean has been, in a very real sense, protecting the surface world from the full consequences of industrial carbon emissions. Quietly, without being asked. As it absorbs heat and produces oxygen and circulates the world's climate simply by being what it is. The mechanism is partly physical. Carbon dioxide dissolves more readily in cold water than warm, and the cold, deep waters of the ocean absorb large amounts of it directly, and partly biological. When phytoplankton photosynthesize, they absorb carbon dioxide and fix it into organic carbon, their own bodies, essentially. When those phytoplankton die, some of them sink. Their bodies, along with all the carbon they contain, drift downward through the water column as part of the marine snow, and some of that carbon reaches the deep ocean floor and is buried in the sediment, removed from the carbon cycle, locked away, stored in the deep for thousands or millions of years. This process is called the biological carbon pump. And it has been running continuously for hundreds of millions of years. The coal and oil that human industry burns, the fossil fuels that release carbon dioxide when combusted, are themselves the product of this pump. Ancient marine organisms accumulated on ancient ocean floors, buried under sediment, transformed by heat and pressure over millions of years into the concentrated carbon stores we now extract and burn. The deep ocean created the fossil fuels. Through the same slow, patient biological process it is still running today. The same marine snow, the same sinking of organic carbon, the same burial in the sediment, the same lockup of carbon in the dark at the bottom of the world. The deep ocean is older than the problem it is being asked to help solve, and it is still trying. Still absorbing, still pumping, still doing what it has always done. Patient, slow, without complaint. There is a creature called the barrel-eye fish. It lives at depths of between 400 and 800 meters in the twilight zone, where the last traces of sunlight filter down in faint blue-green gradients from above. The barrel-eye is small, perhaps 15 centimeters long, translucent, almost entirely see-through, so that its organs are visible through its skin in the faint light of its environment. But its most remarkable feature is its eyes. The barrel-eye fish has two large cylindrical eyes, not on the sides of its head, as in most fish, but pointing directly upward. They sit inside a transparent dome of fluid on top of the fish's head, a dome that was, until 2009, not understood to be a dome at all. Scientists studying preserved barrel-eye specimens had always assumed the eyes pointed forward. The transparent dome was invisible in preserved specimens. It collapses when the animal dies. And so for decades the fish was studied and described with what seemed like forward-pointing eyes. Then, in 2009, researchers at the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute managed to observe and film live barrel-eye fish in their natural habitat, an extraordinary technical achievement given how rarely these animals are seen alive and how difficult it is to approach them without disturbing them. What they saw changed the understanding of the animal entirely. The eyes pointed upward, always upward, directed at the faint, filtered light coming down from the surface far above. And within the transparent dome, the eyes could rotate, swiveling forward when needed, then returning to their upward orientation. The barrel-eye fish spends its life looking up, watching the faint silhouettes of creatures above it, the shadows of animals swimming in slightly shallower water, backlit by the dim surface light, waiting for something to drift overhead that it can ascend to capture. It lives in a world of faint blue light and gentle shadows. Its eyes are tuned to that exact quality of light, large enough and sensitive enough to detect the faintest silhouette at the edge of visibility. Always looking up, always watching. In a world where light is precious and information is rare and everything that matters comes from above, there is something in that image that feels at this hour, in this darkness, like something important. A creature in the dark, eyes turned upward, watching the light. Not striving for it, not swimming toward it, simply watching it from below patiently, in the way that the deep ocean watches everything, with attention and without urgency. Let your eyes be still behind your eyelids. Let them rest. There is nothing to look at tonight, nothing to watch for, nothing coming from above that requires your attention.
Only the dark and the quiet and the slow turning of the night toward morning somewhere far above.
The ocean contains within it the history of this planet. Not metaphorically. The sediment on the ocean floor is a physical record, layer by layer, millimeter by millimeter, of everything that has happened on the surface of this Earth for hundreds of millions of years. Scientists drill cores through this sediment, long, cylindrical samples, sometimes hundreds of meters long, that pass through layer after layer of accumulated material. Each layer is a moment in time. The layers are thin, accumulating at a rate of perhaps a centimetre per 1,000 years in the deepest, most remote parts of the abyssal plain. A metre of sediment might represent 100,000 years of Earth history. 100 metres might represent 10 million years. And in each layer, information. The chemical composition of the water at the time of deposition, preserved in the isotopic ratios of the carbonate shells of foraminifera. The temperature of the ocean at the time, encoded in the same shells. The productivity of the surface water, reflected in the density of biological material. The direction and intensity of the Earth's magnetic field at the time, recorded in the magnetic minerals that settled out of the water and aligned themselves as they sank. Mass extinctions leave their mark in the sediment. The layer corresponding to the asteroid impact 66 million years ago, the one that ended the dinosaurs, contains a thin but globally consistent layer of iridium, an element rare on Earth but common in asteroid material. A thin dark line in the sediment, found in cores from every ocean on Earth, marking the boundary between the Cretaceous and the Paleogene. Before the line, dinosaurs. After the line, the world as we know it. The ocean floor contains that boundary, preserved in its sediment. Available to be read by anyone with the right instruments and the patience to drill through enough material to find it. The ocean floor also contains the record of every ice age, of the opening and closing of ocean gateways as the continents moved. Of volcanic eruptions whose ash fell into the ocean and settled into the sediment in thin, distinctive layers that can be dated and traced to their source. The history of this planet is written in the sediment of the deep ocean, in a language made of chemistry and mineral composition and the tiny shells of microscopic creatures that lived and died and sank and accumulated layer upon patient layer for hundreds of millions of years. Scientists read this language and learn what the Earth has been, what it has experienced, what it has survived, how it has changed, and, by extension, how it might change again. The deep ocean is the memory of this planet, a memory longer and more detailed than any other archive that exists, a memory written not in words but in matter, in the atoms and molecules and microscopic shells of organisms that have been doing their quiet, essential work since long before any human being was here to notice. This planet remembers everything. In the dark. At the bottom of the ocean, in the cold. Rest now. Not because you need to be told, but because the night is deep and the story is winding gently down, and your body has been listening and settling and letting go for a long time now. Your breathing is very slow, your heart is beating at its nighttime pace, slower, steadier, deeper than the daytime rhythm. Your muscles have let go of whatever the day asked of them. All of it, the holding, the carrying, the managing and deciding and responding that the waking hours require. None of it is needed now. The night does not require managing. The dark does not require a response. The deep ocean does not ask anything of you except to rest. Be still. Be slow. Be as patient as the creatures of the deep, as patient as the giant isopod waiting in the abyss, as patient as the Greenland shark moving at 1/4 kilometre per hour through the cold Atlantic dark, as patient as the bacteria in the sediment that have been quietly, continuously alive for 100 million years. You have been practicing this your whole life. Every night, every time the light went out and the day ended and your body knew without being told exactly what to do. Trust it now, it knows. The deep ocean is full of things we have not yet understood. Some of them are creatures, Some of them are geological processes, the slow planet-scale movements of heat and rock and water that have been shaping the ocean floor since the first ocean formed on this planet nearly 4 billion years ago. Some of them are chemical, the extraordinary variety of compounds produced by deep-sea organisms, many of which have never been synthesized in any laboratory, many of which have properties we have not yet begun to explore. The pharmaceutical industry has found in compounds produced by deep-sea organisms substances with remarkable properties. Potential antibiotics, anti-cancer compounds, substances that inhibit processes involved in inflammation, in clotting, in the behavior of cells in ways that surface chemistry has not managed to replicate. The deep ocean may contain, in the biochemistry of its strange and ancient organisms, the solution to problems that medicine has not yet solved. Not certainly, not soon. The work of identifying and testing and understanding these compounds is slow and expensive and difficult, but possibly. In the chemistry of a deep-sea sponge that has been attached to a hydrothermal vent wall for 1,000 years, in the enzyme of a pressure-adapted bacterium that lives at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, in the bioluminescent compounds of a mid-water jellyfish that no human has ever seen alive, something useful, something that could help. Waiting in the dark, as everything in the deep ocean waits, patiently, without urgency, for as long as it takes. The ocean gives on its own schedule, not ours. In the midnight zone between 1,000 and 4,000 meters, where no sunlight reaches and bioluminescence is the only light, there is a daily migration that is, by volume of biomass, the largest migration on Earth every day. Every single day, in every ocean on Earth. At dusk, enormous quantities of small animals, lanternfish, krill, copepods, small squid, myctophid fish, hundreds of species of zooplankton begin to rise from the midnight zone toward the surface. They travel hundreds of meters in a few hours, rising through the twilight zone into the sunlit surface layer to feed on the phytoplankton and the zooplankton of the productive surface waters under the cover of darkness. Then, before dawn, they descend again, back down, through the twilight zone, into the midnight zone, back to the darkness and the cold and the safety of the deep, where the surface predators that hunt by sight cannot easily follow. Every night, every ocean, billions upon billions of individual animals making the same journey, up at dusk, down before dawn. The deep, scattering layer. First discovered during World War II, when naval sonar detected what appeared to be a false ocean floor, a layer of material that reflected sonar signals back to the surface. Navy operators were puzzled by what seemed to be a second movable bottom, a layer that rose at night and descended during the day. It was in fact the daily migration. Billions of small animals, dense enough in aggregate to reflect sonar, rising and falling with the rhythm of the day. A living clock, moving up and down in synchrony with the rotation of the Earth, responding to the light levels above, following a rhythm that has no doubt been going on for hundreds of millions of years. The ocean has its own daily rhythm, its own pulse, rising at dusk, falling at dawn, like breathing in and out the daily breath of the ocean, billions of lives rising and falling together in the dark. Let your own rhythm match it, the slow, deep rhythm of a resting body, the rhythm that needs no instruction, no effort, no management, the rhythm that has been keeping you alive since before you had any awareness of it. In and out, down, into the deep, into the dark, into the slow, patient, ancient quiet that has always been here, waiting for you, at the bottom of every night. There is a question that oceanographers sometimes ask themselves. Not a scientific question, not one that can be answered with instruments or data or peer-reviewed papers. A more personal one. If the deep ocean were to disappear tomorrow, if every trench and abyssal plain and hydrothermal vent and midnight zone were somehow to empty, how long would life on the surface last? The honest answer is, not long. Without the ocean's oxygen production, the atmosphere would slowly deplete. Without the ocean's heat absorption, global temperatures would swing to uninhabitable extremes. Without the ocean's carbon absorption, greenhouse warming would accelerate dramatically. Without the ocean's circulation, the climate systems that distribute heat and rainfall across the entire surface of the planet would collapse. The surface world exists because the ocean exists, not the other way around. The ocean was here first. It will be here last. Everything that lives on land, every forest, every city, every living thing that breathes air, is a late addition to a story that is fundamentally about the ocean. We came from the ocean. Every living thing that walks or flies or crawls on the surface of this earth is descended from creatures that lived in the ocean, that made the transition from water to land slowly over hundreds of millions of years, trading gills for lungs, fins for limbs, the buoyancy of water for the weight of gravity. We carry the ocean with us. In the saltiness of our blood, roughly the same salinity as ancient seawater. In the rhythm of our breathing, a rhythm that evolved in ancestors that had gills before they had lungs. In the fact that our embryos in the earliest weeks of development pass through stages that resemble the developmental stages of fish, a brief, recapitulated glimpse of where we came from. The ocean is not out there. It is also in here, in the salt of your blood, in the rhythm of your breathing, in the ancient embodied memory of a time when your ancestors lived entirely in water and had not yet imagined the possibility of land. You are resting in the ocean tonight, and the ocean is resting in you. The night is very deep now. The words are becoming softer, more space between them, more room for the silence to settle in. The deep ocean is still around you. Dark, cold, still, patient. The creatures of the deep are going about their quiet business, the lanternfish descending before the dawn, the giant isopod waiting in the abyss, the barrel-eye fish turning its eyes upward toward a light too faint and too distant to be seen from here. The Greenland shark is somewhere in the cold North Atlantic, moving at 1/4 kilometer per hour through water that has not seen sunlight in 1,000 years. The blue whale is somewhere in the Southern Ocean, its long, low call moving through the Sofar Channel toward a listener thousands of miles away. The hydrothermal vents are glowing in the dark of the Pacific Ridge, white and black and red, surrounded by tube worms and blind shrimp, and the dense living community that has never needed the sun. All of it happening right now. All of it continuing, as it has continued through every night of every year for millions and millions of years. And you are part of it, not as a visitor, not as an observer, but as a living thing on a living planet, resting in the dark the way every living thing rests in the dark, with the ocean in your blood and the night around you, and the morning somewhere far above, where the light will return in its own time. There is nothing else needed now, nothing else required. The story is almost finished. But it does not end, it only grows quieter, like the ocean deepens as it descends, not stopping, not arriving anywhere, just becoming more still, more dark, more patient with every meter. Let yourself go with it. Down. And still. and quiet. And deep. Breathe. Just breathe. There is nothing left to do tonight except breathe. The story is almost over. Not because it has ended, the story of the deep ocean never ends. It has been going on for 4 billion years, and it will go on long after the last human voice has finished describing it. But tonight's telling is almost done. And what remains is the gentlest part, the part where the words grow few and the silences grow long. The part where the ocean settles into its deepest, most ancient quiet. And you settle with it. You have been on a long journey tonight. Longer than most journeys. You have descended 11 kilometers through the water column of the Pacific Ocean. You have crossed the abyssal plain and followed the walls of the Mariana Trench to its lowest point. You have met creatures that have been alive since before the first dinosaur drew breath. You have heard the sounds of the deep ocean and touched the silence of Challenger Deep and breathed with the ocean as it breathed with you. You have followed the Megalodon from its first appearance in the fossil record to its quiet disappearance in a world that was changing too fast for something so large and so ancient to follow. You have sat with the coelacanth, unchanged for 300 million years. With the Greenland shark, 5 centuries old and still moving slowly through the cold. With the vampire squid, 300 million years of quiet survival on almost nothing. With the barrel-eye fish, looking upward in the dark, always upward. In a world of faint blue light and patient shadows, you have been to the bottom of the world. And you are still here, still breathing, still resting, still held by the dark and the quiet and the vast, patient presence of the ocean that has been beneath us all along. The ocean at night is different from the ocean during the day. Not in its depth, not in its temperature, not in the lives of the creatures that inhabit its midnight zones and abyssal plains. Those lives continue unchanged, because there is no day and no night in the deep. But at the surface, the change is real. At night, the surface of the ocean loses the wind patterns that the sun's heating of the atmosphere drives during the day. It grows calmer, smoother, the waves smaller, the currents gentler, and the bioluminescence always present in the surface waters becomes visible. On a calm, moonless night, far from any coastline, the surface of the ocean can glow, not brightly, not continuously, but in flashes and swirls and the faint blue-green trails of disturbed water, the bioluminescent organisms in the surface layer responding to movement, to the pressure wave of a passing ship, to the stroke of a swimmer's arm, to the leap of a dolphin breaking through. Each disturbance produces a brief, cold light, a flash of blue-green, lasting less than a second, fading back to darkness. Then another somewhere nearby. Then another. The ocean lighting itself, in response to movement, in response to disturbance. As if the water itself were alive and reactive and aware of what passes through it. Sailors have described this phenomenon for as long as there have been sailors. Ancient mariners crossing unfamiliar oceans on dark, calm nights watched the water beneath their keels light up with cold blue fire and tried to understand what they were seeing. Spirits, gods, the ocean announcing itself, the deep signaling from below, the actual explanation, microscopic organisms, single-celled dinoflagellates producing brief flashes of bioluminescence when mechanically disturbed, is no less extraordinary for being accurate. The ocean lights up when touched. It responds to contact with light. On the darkest nights, in the calmest water, far from land, it glows. Let that image be with you now. The dark surface of the night ocean. Calm and still, and below it, Infinitely below it, the absolute darkness of the deep, lit only by the cold, patient lights of creatures that have been making their own illumination since before the first eye evolved to see it. No moon needed, no stars needed. The ocean makes its own light. In the dark, from within. There is a place in the Pacific Ocean called the Oceanic Pole of Inaccessibility. It is also called Point Nemo, after the captain in Jules Verne's novel The Man Who Went to Sea and Never Came Back, who chose the ocean over the land, who spent his life in the depths and never regretted it. Point Nemo is the point in the ocean furthest from any land. It sits in the South Pacific, roughly equidistant from three remote islands, Juicy Island to the north, Motunui off Easter Island to the northeast, and Maha Island near Antarctica to the south. The nearest land from Point Nemo is approximately 2,600 kilometers away in any direction. 2,600 kilometers of open ocean, in every direction. As far as the eye could see from the surface, if an eye were there to see, nothing but water. The nearest human beings to Point Nemo at any given time are not on the land. They are the astronauts aboard the International Space Station, passing overhead at an altitude of approximately 400 kilometers, closer to Point Nemo vertically than any inhabited land is horizontally. The most remote place on the surface of this planet. And below it, the deep Pacific. Abyssal plains extending in every direction. The quiet, dark, patient water going down and down and down. No ships pass near Point Nemo. There is no reason to. No port within reach. No resource to be extracted. No route that passes through it. It is simply the most alone place on Earth. The place where the ocean is most fully itself, unobserved, undisturbed, unknown. Going about its ancient, quiet business in total solitude, Point Nemo is also, by some accounts, where the ocean is at its quietest acoustically. The sounds of human industry, the hum of ship engines, the sonar of naval vessels, the acoustic pollution of ports and coastlines fade with distance. At Point Nemo, the background acoustic environment of the ocean is as close to what it was before human beings began sailing as anywhere on Earth. The sounds that remain are old, the calls of whales, the movement of deep water, the distant acoustic signatures of geological processes, the faint, continuous acoustic breath of the living ocean, the sum of billions of small sounds, produced by billions of small organisms, adding up to something that sounds at this scale like silence. Ancient silence. The silence of a world before noise. The silence of the deep, most remote ocean on a still night, 2,600 kilometers from the nearest shore. Let that silence find you. Even here. Even now. Even in whatever room you are resting in, with whatever sounds drift in from outside. Beneath all of it, beneath every sound the waking world makes, there is this silence. The silence of the deep, the silence that has been here since before there was anything to make a sound. Find it, it is there, in the space between the sounds, in the pause between your breaths, in the quiet center of this night. The Megalodon left behind its teeth. We began there, at the beginning of the night, the beginning of this journey, with the teeth of the largest predator that has ever lived in the sea. Triangle-shaped, serrated. Some of them larger than a human hand. Dark with age, mineralized, preserved in the sediment of the ocean floor for millions of years. And it is right to end there too. Because the teeth are the only solid physical evidence we have that this animal existed. Everything else, its size, its behavior, its hunting strategies, its social structure, The circumstances of its disappearance is inference and estimation and careful scientific reasoning applied to incomplete evidence. But the teeth are real. They are in museums, in private collections, in the drawers of research institutions, occasionally still being pulled from the ocean floor by dredges and ROVs and the nets of deep-sea trawlers who find them caught up in the sediment. Real objects from a real animal that lived for 19 million years in the ocean of this planet and then was gone. There is something in the existence of those teeth that feels important at this hour. Not frightening, not ominous, something closer to comfort. The Megalodon lived for 19 million years. That is longer than the entire history of the genus Homo, the line of evolution that produced human beings. It is longer than the existence of the Mediterranean Sea in its current form. It is longer than the existence of most mountain ranges currently visible on the surface of the Earth. 19 million years of swimming in the ocean. 19 million years of hunting and feeding and reproducing and living in the warm, productive waters of a world that has long since changed beyond recognition. And then, quietly, over thousands of years, as the oceans cooled and the prey species it depended on disappeared, it stopped. Not in a catastrophe, not with a bang, but gradually, in the way that the deep ocean does everything, slowly, patiently, over lengths of time that no individual life can perceive. It left behind its teeth. And those teeth are still here. 17 million years after the last one was made. In the sediment. In the museums, in the dark water of the deep Pacific, where they have been settling and accumulating and waiting. In the patient way that the deep ocean waits for everything to be found. Things persist. The deep ocean teaches this again and again in every creature and every sediment core and every fossilized tooth. Things persist longer than you expect, in forms you would not predict, through changes that seem, at the time they are happening, like endings. The ocean persists, life persists, the dark and the cold and the quiet persist, and so do you. Through every night, through every difficulty the day leaves behind, through every hour that felt, at the time, like more than you could manage, you are still here, still breathing, still going. Let your body be completely heavy now, completely still. Let every part of you that has been holding tension, holding position, holding the shape of the waking day, let it go. Your face, the muscles around your eyes, the small muscles at the corners of your mouth, the muscles along your jaw, let them all release. Your neck, the long muscles running from your skull to your shoulders, let them soften. Your shoulders, wide and heavy, dropping backward, releasing toward the surface beneath them. Your chest, moving gently with each breath, nothing more than that, just the slow, quiet rise and fall. Your arms, your hands, your fingers, uncurled and open, heavy and still. Your back, every vertebra, every muscle that runs alongside the spine, let the surface beneath you take their weight completely. Your hips, your legs, your feet, all of it released, all of it resting, all of it held. You do not need to hold yourself tonight. The surface beneath you is doing that. Gravity is doing that. The night is doing that. You only need to rest. The last light of the deep ocean, below the sunlit zone, below the twilight zone, below the last faint traces of surface light that filter down into the upper midnight zone. There is a depth at which no photon of sunlight has ever penetrated. Approximately 1,000 meters in most of the ocean. shallower in turbid coastal water, perhaps slightly deeper in the clearest open ocean water. But somewhere, at some depth, the last photon stops. The last particle of sunlight reaches the end of its downward journey and is absorbed by the water around it, its energy converted to a tiny, imperceptible increment of heat. Below that point, no sunlight has ever reached. Not once. Not in 4 billion years of oceans on this planet. Not during the Cambrian explosion, when the ocean first burst into extraordinary biological diversity. Not during the great Permian extinction, when 96% of marine species disappeared. Not during any of the warm periods or ice ages or mass extinctions or geological upheavals that have marked the history of this planet. The deep ocean below 1,000 meters has been in absolute darkness for as long as liquid water has existed on this Earth. 4 billion years of unbroken dark. In that dark, life has been living for hundreds of millions of years. Not despite the darkness. Because of it. The darkness is the environment. The darkness is home. The darkness is the condition that shaped every adaptation, every body plan, every biochemical trick that the creatures of the deep have developed over hundreds of millions of years of evolution. The darkness is not empty. It never was. It is full of life that has learned slowly, patiently, over more time than the human mind can truly hold, to live without light, to make their own light when they need it, to feel the world through pressure and electricity and chemistry and sound when sight is not available, to slow down and conserve and wait and persist through the cold and the dark and the crushing weight of the water above. Life in the dark, patient and ancient and extraordinary, going about its quiet business in the oldest night on Earth. The darkness behind your eyelids is not empty either. It is full of the electrical activity of a mind that is slowing, settling, releasing the shapes and patterns of the day into softer and less defined forms. The half-formed images that come at the age of sleep. The thoughts that lose their edges and become something closer to sensation. The awareness that fades without disappearing entirely, that remains for a little while as a gentle thread of consciousness too thin to hold any particular content. This is the hypnagogic state. The threshold between waking and sleep. The place where the mind does something remarkable, where it loosens its grip on the structured, sequential, cause and effect world of waking thought and begins to drift toward the associative, imagistic, untethered world of dreaming. You may already be there. The words may be arriving at a distance like sounds heard through water, present, recognizable, but softened and slowed and no longer quite in focus. That is exactly right. That is sleep coming to find you. Let it come. Do not reach for it. Do not try to hold it. Do not try to notice it too precisely. Consciousness, examined closely, tends to wake itself back up. Simply let the words continue. Let them arrive and depart at whatever distance feels natural. Let them be the sound of the deep ocean, moving through the dark, present, continuous, requiring nothing. There are places in the deep ocean where time moves differently. Not in a physical sense, not in the way that physicists describe time dilation near massive objects or at high velocities, but in a biological sense, in the cold of the deep abyss, where temperatures hover just above freezing, metabolic rates slow dramatically. The chemical reactions that drive life, the processes of respiration and growth and reproduction, occur much more slowly than they do at the warm temperatures of the surface. An animal in the deep ocean ages more slowly than it would at the surface. Not because time itself is slower, but because the processes of life that track time, the accumulation of cellular damage, the turnover of tissues, the slow degradation of the biological machinery proceed at a reduced rate in the cold. The Greenland shark grows approximately 1 centimeter per year. 1 centimeter. At that rate of growth, to reach the 5-meter length of a mature adult takes approximately 500 years, and then it continues to live. Not quickly, not urgently, but continuously in the cold North Atlantic for as long as the cold keeps doing what the cold has always done, slowing things down, making them last, preserving them beyond what the warmer world would allow. The cold is a kind of time, a slow time, a patient time. The deep ocean's time measured not in seconds and hours and years, but in the geological spans of sediment accumulation and tectonic drift and the 1,000-year circuits of the thermohaline circulation. Tonight you have been moving in that time, the deep ocean's time, slow, patient, unhurried, far removed from the urgency and pace of the surface world. There is no deadline in the deep ocean, no schedule, no alarm, no next thing to get to. Only the slow, continuous, ancient work of being alive, which is, tonight, the only work required of you. Somewhere in the South Pacific, the marine snow is falling. It is always falling. Right now, in this moment, as you breathe and rest and drift towards sleep, the marine snow is descending through the water column of the Pacific Ocean. Trillions of particles, the remains of phytoplankton that photosynthesized in the sunlit surface layer today. The fecal pellets of zooplankton that grazed on those phytoplankton. The shed mucus of filter-feeding animals. The dead bodies of creatures from every layer of the ocean, beginning their long, slow descent, falling at perhaps 1 or 2 meters per hour. At that rate, a particle that leaves the surface today will reach the abyssal plane, 4,000 meters below, in approximately 2 to 4 months. 2 to 4 months of slow, continuous falling. Through the sunlit zone and the twilight zone and the midnight zone and the upper abyss. Through temperature gradients and pressure changes and zones of varying chemistry, eaten and repackaged and consumed and partially regenerated a dozen times along the way by the creatures of each zone who intercept it and extract what energy they can and release the remainder to continue its descent. And what finally arrives at the bottom is the residue of all of that, the fraction that survived. The particles that were not consumed, the carbon that passed through the entire water column without being fully broken down, settling into the sediment, becoming part of the record, becoming part of the planet's memory. Joining the layers that have been accumulating there since before the first fish had eyes. The marine snow is falling right now, as you breathe, as you rest, as the night deepens around you and the day grows more distant and sleep comes closer. The marine snow is falling, slowly, continuously, in the dark. Let your thoughts fall like that. Let them drift, not held, not directed, not examined, just falling, slowly through the layers, through whatever remains of the day's concerns, growing smaller, less defined, less urgent with each passing moment, through the twilight layer of half-formed thoughts, through the midnight layer of loosening awareness, all the way down, into the soft, dark, patient floor of sleep. The whale falls. We have not spoken of them tonight, and they deserve a moment. When a whale dies in the open ocean, its body sinks. Slowly at first, the gases of decomposition provide some buoyancy, and for a while the body drifts in the upper water column, attended by sharks and other surface scavengers. But eventually, the gases escape or are consumed, and the body descends. A whale, a blue whale, the largest animal alive, can weigh up to 170 tons. When that weight finally sinks to the abyssal plain, it arrives like a gift. An enormous input of organic material into an environment where food is almost always scarce. The whale fall, as scientists call it, goes through stages. In the first stage, mobile scavengers arrive. Hagfish, sleeper sharks, rat-tailed fish, animals that can smell the chemical signals of decomposition from kilometers away. They strip the soft tissue from the bones over months or years, consuming the majority of the organic material. In the second stage, smaller organisms move in. Polychaete worms, crustaceans, animals that extract the remaining organic material from the bones and the surrounding sediment. In the third stage, the sulfophilic stage, the bones themselves become the habitat. The lipids stored deep in whale bones are released slowly by bacterial decomposition. Sulfur-reducing bacteria break them down, producing hydrogen sulfide as a byproduct, the same compound that sustains the communities around hydrothermal vents. And so the whale bones become, in effect, a cold seep ecosystem. A community of organisms that live by chemosynthesis, extracting energy from chemistry rather than from sunlight, clustered around the dead whale in the dark. Tube worms, mussels, crustaceans, the same kind of dense chemosynthetic community found around hydrothermal vents, but portable, temporary, existing only for as long as the whale bones continue to release their lipids. A large whale foal can sustain this ecosystem for decades. Decades of community life, in the dark, on the bones of an animal that lived at the surface. Scientists believe that whale falls may serve as stepping stones, islands of chemical energy on the abyssal plain, allowing the specialist organisms of chemosynthetic ecosystems to colonize new areas. To spread from one vent to another, using the scattered whale falls of the deep ocean as waypoints in a journey that takes place over geological time. The death of a whale creates life. For decades. In the dark, at the bottom of the ocean. The largest animals on Earth, contributing to the deep ocean ecosystem not only through their lives, through the mixing of the water as they swim, through the nutrients their waste provides to the surface phytoplankton, but through their deaths. Everything in the ocean connects. Everything contributes. Nothing is wasted, not even 170 tons of whale settling into the sediment 4,000 meters below the surface. The ocean finds a use for everything. Eventually. In the patient way that the ocean does everything. Your breathing is very slow now. Each breath is a little deeper than it needs to be, a little quieter. The breath of a body that is almost asleep. That is where you are. At the threshold, the place between the waking world and the sleeping one, where both exist simultaneously. Where consciousness is present but soft, where the ordinary laws of sequence and logic and cause and effect have begun to dissolve. Let them dissolve. There is nothing on the other side of that dissolution to be afraid of. Only sleep. Only rest. Only the ancient biological process that has been restoring you every night of your life. Cleaning the toxins from your brain, consolidating the memories of the day, repairing the tissues that the waking hours have worn. Your body knows how to do this. It has been doing it since before you can remember. It does not need your help. It does not need your attention. It does not need you to be conscious for any part of it. In fact, and this is perhaps the most liberating thing about sleep, it works better when you are not there. When the conscious, managing, directing part of you steps back and lets the body do what the body does. Step back now. Let the body take over. It knows exactly what to do. In the deepest layer of the sediment, below the layers from the last ice age, below the iridium boundary of the asteroid impact, below the fossil record of every species that has ever lived in this ocean, there is older material still. Red clay. The most ancient, most remote, most slowly accumulating sediment on Earth. It builds at a rate of approximately 1 millimeter per 1,000 years. 1 millimeter per 1,000 years. In the time between when you woke up this morning and right now, the red clay at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean grew by less than a single atom's width. But over millions of years it accumulates, layer upon layer of the finest possible particles, wind-blown dust from the continents, cosmic dust from space, the most refractory minerals from the decomposition of everything that has ever fallen into the ocean. All of it compressed, slowly, by the weight of the water and the sediment above it. All of it becoming, over geological time, a kind of stone, a record of the deep ocean's patience written in clay and silica and the faint magnetic signatures of particles that aligned themselves with the Earth's magnetic field as they settled. The oldest ocean sediment currently known is approximately 170 million years old. 170 million years of continuous accumulation. Layer by patient layer, in the dark. Without interruption, without anyone watching, without any awareness that it was building a record that hundreds of millions of years later, a small creature from the surface world would learn to read. The deep ocean does not know it is a library. It simply is one. The way it simply is everything it is. Oxygenator, climate system, heat battery, carbon pump, habitat memory. Without intention, without awareness, without any need for recognition or thanks, simply being what it is, doing what it does. In the dark, for as long as the planet lasts. The night is almost gone. Not this night, your night. The night you are sleeping through, that has many hours left, and you will spend all of them in rest. But this telling is almost done. The story has found its way to its end the way all rivers find the ocean, not suddenly, not dramatically, but gradually, slowing as it goes, widening, growing quieter, the current gentle and the banks far away, and the water deep and still and moving so slowly it is almost indistinguishable from rest. We began in the dark. We are ending in the dark. And the dark, it turns out, is not empty or frightening or cold in any way that matters. The dark is full of ancient creatures and deep currents and 4 billion years of unbroken life. Full of sounds too low to hear and lights too faint to see and processes too slow to watch but too fundamental to live without. Full of the quiet, patient, extraordinary work of an ocean that has been keeping this planet alive since long before any living thing had eyes to see it with. The dark is where life rests, where it repairs and restores and prepares itself for whatever comes next. Where the most ancient creatures have been living for longer than imagination can comfortably hold, where the Greenland shark moves at 1/4 kilometer per hour through water that has not seen sunlight in 1,000 years, where the marine snow falls always and continuously in the oldest silence on Earth. You belong to the dark tonight, not permanently, not forever. Morning will come, it always does, and the light will return, and the day will make its demands, and the surface world will resume its noisy, urgent, necessary business. But not yet. Not for a long time. Tonight belongs to the dark, and the dark belongs to rest, and rest belongs to you. Let the last words come slowly, very slowly, with long spaces between them. Let each one settle like a particle of marine snow drifting down through still water toward the soft, patient floor of sleep. You are held by the night, by the dark, by the ocean that breathes with you and has been breathing with every living thing on this planet for 4 billion years. You are safe, completely safe. In the oldest darkness there is, you are resting, as the Greenland shark rests, as the giant isopod rests, as the sediment rests and the abyssal plain rests, and the whole deep ocean rests in its ancient, patient, unbroken quiet. You do not need to do anything. You do not need to be anywhere. You do not need to think or plan or remember or prepare. There is only this: the breath, the dark, the deep, and the slow, patient, ancient, extraordinary night that holds you. Sleep, if you have not already. Sleep. The ocean will still be here. The Mariana Trench will still be here. The creatures of the deep will still be going about their quiet business in the dark below the dark. And when morning comes, the phytoplankton will be there in the sunlit surface layer, making the oxygen for your first waking breath. The ocean will keep you, as it has always kept you, as it has kept every living thing on this planet since the first life appeared in the first ocean 4 billion years ago. Go gently into the dark, into the deep, into the long, quiet, restoring night. Follow Unseen Ocean History for more deep ocean mysteries.